As the evening shadows lengthened across the sprawling grounds of the palace, I found myself once again ensnared in the unavoidable web woven by Aldrich and Rose. The guests from foreign lands, some of whom chose to linger in the festive aura of the imperial palace, were of no concern to me, as I made my way back to the more somber confines of the Western Palace. My mind, weary from the day's ordeals, craved nothing more than the comforting embrace of a warm bath. Observing the fatigue etched on the faces of my ladies-in-waiting, I dismissed them with a wave of my hand, urging them to seek their own solace and rest. Alone, I began the task of drawing my bath, the warm steam promising a brief respite. However, this fleeting moment of peace was abruptly shattered by the arrival of Aldrich's captain of the guard. His presence alone was a harbinger of unwelcome news, stirring a familiar sense of dread within me. For nearly a month, each unexpected summons from Aldrich had heralded an encounter fraught with tension and discomfort. As I made my way through the labyrinthian corridors towards Aldrich's chambers, a heaviness settled over my heart. I braced myself, schooling my features into a mask of composure, hoping to maintain this facade in the presence of my husband. Upon entering Aldrich's bedchamber in the eastern wing, I was immediately struck by the sight before me. Aldrich, the ever-imposing figure, sat rigidly on a chair beside the bed, his piercing gaze fixed intently upon me. On the bed lay Rose, a cloth draped over her forehead, her presence like a silent spectre in the room. I turned my gaze back to Aldrich, feeling the oppressive weight of the atmosphere closing in around us. The captain of the guard, sensing the tension, excused himself with a terse,
"I'll take my leave,"
and closed the door behind him. The room, now sealed from the outside world, felt even more stifling. Aldrich's voice, curt and devoid of warmth, broke the silence.
"Do you have anything to say to me?"
His question hung in the air, charged with an unspoken accusation. "Why did you call me here?" My voice was steady, but inside a storm of emotions raged. Aldrich's eyes narrowed slightly, his lips pressing into a thin line.
"It seems you have been neglecting certain duties, my queen."
I felt a surge of indignation at his words. Neglecting duties? I have fulfilled every obligation expected of me, both in public and private. He leaned forward, the flickering candlelight casting shadows across his face.
"And yet it appears you have been avoiding our guest, Prince Henry. A queen must be a gracious hostess to all, especially to such a distinguished visitor."
My heart raced at the mention of Prince Henry, but I kept my expression neutral. Prince Henry has been accorded every courtesy due to his station. My avoidance, as you call it, is merely a reflection of my commitment to propriety. Aldrich's gaze drifted towards Rose, who lay still on the bed, seemingly oblivious to our conversation. Was she still suffering from her fainting spell? When Aldrich turned back to me, his voice carried a hint of menace.
"And what of your commitment to your king, to your husband?"
I met his gaze squarely, refusing to be cowed. My commitment to you, Aldrich, has never wavered, despite the challenges we have recently faced. Aldrich stood abruptly, his movement causing Rose to stir slightly. He sighed, lowering his voice.
"Challenges, yes. Challenges that perhaps require a more direct approach."
I felt a chill run down my spine at his insinuation. "What are you suggesting?" Aldrich walked towards me, his steps measured.
"Perhaps it is time we revisited certain arrangements. Arrangements that might benefit all parties involved."
I stood my ground, though my mind raced with the implications of his words. "And what arrangements would those be, Aldrich?" He stopped just inches away from me, his eyes boring into mine.
Arrangements that will ensure the stability of our kingdom and the satisfaction of its rulers.
Aldrich's gaze lingered on Rose's still form, her quiet breaths a stark contrast to the tension that filled the room. Time stretched, an invisible thread pulling taut with each passing moment, until Aldrich finally broke the silence. His question cut through the air, sharp and unexpected.
Did you really want to prove that Rose is a runaway slave?
That story again. Aldrich's eyes never left Rose. His words, far from being a compliment, dripped with a bitter undertone.
Bronwyn, you were born a great aristocrat. You have a good family, enormous wealth, great power, a beautiful estate, and a natural wit and beauty. But in spite of that, you still want to keep everyone beneath you.
I stared at him, my eyes narrowed. His words hung in the air, heavy and accusing. I remained silent, my mind a whirlwind of emotions.
Rose had nothing. She became a slave because she had to. She has no memory of her parents or family, no property, no power, no home, and yet she is a queen in intelligence and beauty. She simply didn't have opportunities open to her. And then she met me. Can you fault her for trying to achieve such things when I can offer them? The chance to be loved, to eat a warm meal, to relax on a comfortable bed, to learn something.
To my dismay, his voice softened as he spoke of Rose, a stark contrast to the coldness he had shown me. I wanted to lash out, to remind him that Rose had also taken my husband, but I bit my tongue. My pride was already wounded enough. I wanted to ask if he expected me to sympathize with her, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just stared at him, unable to comprehend his intentions. Was he asking me to take care of Rose, to show her kindness in her time of need?
I don't need you to understand, Rose, but I do ask that you show her compassion. Can you give it?
Aldrich's question was almost a plea, his eyes finally meeting mine. Compassion. The word felt foreign, heavy on my tongue. To her, your concubine.
Yes, compassion. You who have had everything, who have lived nothing but a life of ease. Can you not spare a shred of kindness for someone who has had nothing?
I looked at him, then at Rose. Her presence in Aldrich's bedchamber, right in front of me, for God's sake. A constant reminder of my fractured marriage. Compassion is not a well that one can draw from indefinitely, Aldrich. It requires a heart willing to give, and a recipient worthy to receive. Aldrich's expression faltered.
And you believe Rose is not worthy?
In this case, it's a matter of circumstance. You ask me to show compassion to the woman who stands between us. The woman who's become a symbol of my own failings as a queen and a wife. How do you expect me to do that? Aldrich looked away, his jaw tightening.
I expected you to rise above these petty grievances, to be the queen you were meant to be.
Petty? Being a queen does not mean I cease to be human, Aldrich. I have my limits. And this is one of them.
But you show compassion to every other subject in this realm, regardless of circumstances. Why can you not spare a shred of that compassion to Rose?
His words, sharp as daggers, pierced the strained atmosphere. But as quickly as the storm had come, it receded, and he collapsed back into his chair, his demeanor crumbling into weariness. At that moment, Rose stirred, her groan pulling Aldrich's attention. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle, a stark contrast to the harshness of his words. I noticed the shirt she wore, with its wide sleeves. Aldrich's. It was a detail that seemed to mock me. The urge to clench my fist was overwhelming. My next words came through gritted teeth. Rose is your concubine, so you should take care of her. I'm not looking after her. She's not under my jurisdiction.
Take care of her? I just want you to leave her alone. To stop spreading rumors and lies. To just be civil, for God's sake, Bronwyn. You know how royal life works. It is not our own.
Have I ever provoked her?
Yesterday, in front of Prince Henry, when he insulted Rose. Of the two of them, you shouldn't have sided with the foreigner. You should have stood by your subject.
Again, Aldrich's gaze drifted to Rose. As I said, I knew the truth, and sided with Prince Henry accordingly.
You cannot possibly believe that Rose lied.
It is you who believe in her innocence, not me.
And what about today's efforts to undermine her status?
You know I never spoke to Rose today.
You may not have spoken to Rose herself, but you called Viscount Rothescue from behind her back.
Aldrich's accusation was like a thunderclap, breaking the tense silence. I glared at him, my patience fraying. What are you talking about?
You wanted to prove that Rose is a runaway slave, and so you brought Viscount Rothescue to the festivities.
He cannot believe this madness. I was dumbfounded, unable to comprehend the absurdity of his claim. I invited the Viscount because of Rose. Aldrich let out a weary exhale.
Ever since I said that Rose wasn't an escaped slave, didn't you want to prove me otherwise? Were you so offended by everyone's attention over her?
You're speaking nonsense. Aldrich leaned forward, his gaze intense.
Am I? Or is it that you cannot bear the thought of someone else receiving the affection and admiration that you feel should be solely yours?
I staggered backwards. His words cut deep, but I refused to let them shake me. This is not about affection or admiration, Aldrich. This is about truth and integrity and duty, something that seems to be in short supply around here. Aldrich stood up, his expression one of frustration and resignation.
Bronwyn, I can't speak to you when you're like this. But be aware, I will not allow you to tarnish Rose's reputation based on suspicion and jealousy.
I met his gaze, my resolve unwavering. And I will not stand idly by while falsehoods are paraded as truths. This is not about jealousy, Aldrich. This is about what is right. Struggling to maintain a facade of calmness, I felt a storm brewing within me. Aldrich, his posture rigid with indignation, stood up abruptly, his eyes alight with threatening intensity.
Who knows the guest invitations better than the Queen? You must have been working so hard at this. Only you could have invited Viscount Rothescue.
Yes, I am well aware of the invitations. It was indeed my responsibility. However, I extended the invitation to the Viscount weeks before Rose even set foot in the palace.
He's not an important guest, so why did you invite him to the celebrations?
Aldrich's question was loaded, an attempt to corner me. As I have stated before, I am not incessantly preoccupied with everything concerning Rose. And since you were so confident in her not being a runaway slave, why would I hesitate to send an invitation to Viscount Rothescue? My response was measured, a careful balance between defiance and diplomacy. But inside I was struggling. The only connection I knew of was that Aldrich had found her on the hunting grounds near Rothescue's estate. Since that discovery, not once had I heard it mentioned again. If Rose was merely a commoner, then Rothescue's presence at the celebration was inconsequential. Yet Aldrich seemed to believe I had cunningly calculated Rose to be Rothescue's slave. The very thought was absurd.
If you have any consideration...
You should take care of her yourself. You can't expect me to look after her, even if I didn't know she was Rothescue's slave.
And why is that? Do you fear being tarnished by the concubine?
Aldrich's words pierced through me. I fought to maintain my composure in the face of his harsh judgment. Aldrich, it is not about heartlessness. It's about boundaries and respect. Boundaries that you have continuously crossed, and respect that you have ceaselessly undermined. Aldrich scoffed.
Boundaries? Respect? Is that what you hide behind while you let jealousy and pettiness guide your actions?
Is that what you think this is about? This is about the integrity of the throne, about the dignity of the crown. It is about maintaining order and decorum in this palace, something you seem to have forgotten. Aldrich's expression hardened.
And what of compassion, Bronwyn? What of understanding and empathy? Are these not qualities befitting the crown?
Compassion does not mean turning a blind eye to deception. Understanding does not mean accepting falsehoods. And empathy does not require me to embrace the one who has come between us. We stood there, locked in a stalemate, the air thick with unsaid words and unresolved emotions. In that moment, we were not king and queen, husband and wife. We were two opposing forces, each standing firmly on our own ground, unwilling to yield.
Viscount Rothescue stood in the ornate chamber, his hands still fidgeting, a nervous energy coursing through him. At his side, a cloaked figure stood shrouded in mystery. The Oracle, a woman rumored to have the gift of foresight. The chamber, with its high ceilings and grand tapestries, felt oppressive, a stark contrast to the modest yet comforting confines of his estate. Before him, King Aldrich sat on his throne, his presence as imposing as the myths and legends that surrounded him. Rothescue, though a lord of a small estate, was not accustomed to such grandeur, nor to the piercing gaze of a king. Rothescue began, his voice barely more than a whisper. Your Majesty, the events of today were most unfortunate. He paused, collecting his thoughts, acutely aware of the weight of the king's stare. It was during the hunt, sire. A dispute arose amongst the men. Words were exchanged and tempers flared. That's where it all began. King Aldrich leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving Rothescue. And in this flare of tempers, Viscount, did you forget your place? Did you forget the respect owed to those of higher standing? Rothescue's heart pounded in his chest. He had never imagined he would stand accused before the king, especially for a matter that seemed so trivial in retrospect. No, Your Majesty, I did not forget, but in the heat of the moment, You acted rashly. You allowed your emotions to cloud your judgment. This is not the behavior expected of a lord of the realm, however small his estate may be. The Viscount felt a flush of shame. He had always taken pride in his independence, in his ability to rule his small domain without interference. But now, in the grandeur of the palace, those feelings seemed foolish, naive. Your Majesty, if I may, I assure you, my actions were not meant to challenge or disrespect. It was a moment of folly, nothing more. King Aldrich regarded him for a long moment, then sighed. Viscount Rothescue, your estate may be small, but it is not insignificant. You are a lord of this realm, and as such, you are expected to uphold a certain standard of conduct. Rothescue bowed his head, accepting the reprimand. I understand, Your Majesty.
It will not happen again. I beg your forgiveness, Your Majesty. And most pertinently, I need you to know that I frequently misidentify people's faces. The slave who fled from my estate was also beautiful like your Miss Rose, and had silver hair and dark eyes, and I mistook her for someone else."
Viscount Rothescue bowed again and continued his wheedling.
"I have tarnished the reputation of the king's concubine, and through her, the reputation of the king himself. Please forgive me for my unforgivable mistake."
Rothescue's head was lowered, but his eyes glistened with interest. The young king continued to protect the slave. Not to mention that the Viscount was truly impressed with the young woman.
She thought she could simply wash away her identity and position herself as an imperial concubine. Did the king truly favor her that much?
Rothescue had known back at the manor that she could keep men under her thumb, but her talent was greater than he expected, and could prove useful. "Viscount."
"Yes, sire?"
"You do well to remember to watch your mouth, Rothescue, or I will be sure to take your head and silence it forever."
"Of course, Your Majesty."
As Rothescue turned to leave, the cloaked woman at his side interjected.
Your Majesty, may I have a word?
Aldrich's eyes flashed. "Rothescue, who accompanies you under this cloak of secrecy?" The Viscount cleared his throat, his voice laced with a rare gravity. He had been hoping for this moment.
"Your Majesty, I bring before you an oracle. She claims to have seen a vision that concerns the future of your kingdom."
With a graceful yet deliberate motion, the oracle stepped forward, her eyes piercing through the dimness, locking with Aldrich's. In a voice that seemed to echo from another time, she spoke.
Great King, I have seen the shadows of tomorrow. They bode ill for your reign. The kingdom you cherish stands on the brink of ruin.
Aldrich's expression hardened, his interest piqued. "Speak plainly, Oracle. What did your visions reveal?" Her gaze unflinching, the Oracle continued.
The future brings a storm with the fury of the gods, Your Majesty. In my visions, I saw your kingdom in ruins, its glory but a whisper in the winds of time. Please, sire, remember, the future is not yet set in stone. Your actions, like ripples in a pond, have the power to alter its course.
A silence fell upon the hall, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. Aldrich leaned forward, his mind racing with the implications of her prophecy. She speaks of my line. There can be no doubt. She speaks of the end of my kingdom, leaderless, with no one to inherit. My God, I'm marching towards ruin with Bronwyn. If we can't, if she can't, there must be a son. I must have an heir. Running a rough hand down his face, Aldrich looked up at the woman, desperation in his eyes. And what actions might steer us away from this foreboding fate? The oracle softened, a hint of sorrow about her.
Beware the path of haste and desire, for it leads to destruction. Seek counsel and wisdom. Temper your decisions with foresight. And above all, guard your heart against the darkness that seeks to consume it.
With these final words, the oracle bowed, her message delivered. Aldrich sat back in his throne, his thoughts a tumultuous sea. Unbeknownst to him, Rothescue's lips curled into a devilish grin as both he and the oracle bowed and turned to exit the king's chambers.
As I walked towards my rooms, the air around me seemed charged with a quiet tension. I glanced around in search of its source, but found I was alone. At least I thought I was.
Are you taking a walk, Majesty?
Prince Henry revealed himself. From where, I knew not. He studied me for a brief moment, and I noticed I was hiding behind an attempt at a stoic resolve, though it appeared he could see through the walls I had built. His hand reached out towards me, stopping just shy of my face. His fingers trembled in the air, a testament to the unspoken tension that crackled between us. When he spoke, his voice was low and tender.
I usually wipe away my friends' tears and embrace them when they are heartbroken.
I shook my head, not in denial, but in acknowledgement of the forbidden line we dared not cross. Yet his hand remained suspended, a symbol of the yearning that we both felt, but could not express. Finally, the prince reluctantly withdrew his hand, his sorrowful expression betraying a flush of emotions, his ears tinged with a telling red.
Did your husband insult you again?
Again. The word echoed within me, the reminder of rumors that spread through the court of whispers. My voice was laced with a vulnerability I seldom showed. Why would you say that?
I know it to be true, Majesty.
It's of no consequence. It's a personal matter. I found myself admitting it, hinting at the intimate turmoil that lay beneath the surface of my royal facade. Henry's gaze deepened, filled with a longing and regret that seemed to transcend our current predicament.
If only I had met you first.
His whispered words were laden with a poignant, what if? Only what if?
Bronwyn, then everything would have been different.
His voice broke, revealing a depth of emotion that resonated with my own unacknowledged feelings. After a moment's pause, he spoke again, more composed.
If I can't offer you any comfort, would you like me to send you Majesty?
A faint smile graced my lips, touched by his thoughtful gesture. Yes, that would be comforting. Where is Majesty now?
I'll send him to your room.
Perhaps we could see him together. I have many questions about the hawk. Prince Henry's reaction was delayed, his eyes lighting up with a mix of surprise. His words fumbled.
Of course, Your Majesty, I would be honored to introduce you to.
As we walked side by side towards my chambers, the air around us seemed charged with an unspoken connection. In the shared anticipation of meeting Majesty, there was a temporary escape from our roles and the forbidden emotions simmering beneath them. Then, something within him seemed to shift. My prince, is everything all right?
Well, you see, Majesty is quite shy. He becomes agitated whenever there are 2 or more people in the room with him. I wouldn't want to cause the creature any discomfort.
His explanation sounded more like a hastily concocted excuse. This left me curious, and I couldn't hide my skepticism. The same bird that had merrily interacted with my ladies-in-waiting was now supposedly too timid for company. I stared at Prince Henry, who now appeared noticeably flustered.
My queen?
Realization dawned on me. Perhaps it was indeed too forward for Prince Henry to visit my rooms, or for me to venture into his, especially to share a moment with a pet bird. Such actions might be misconstrued, given the delicate nature of our relationship. I attempted to ease the tension that had inadvertently formed. I apologize, I made an unreasonable request. Prince Henry groaned softly, his hand moving to his forehead in a gesture of mild frustration.
No, it's not that. What would you like to ask about Majesty?
His favorite.
The Queen.
I was taken aback by his response. Was this another one of his jests? It was a peculiar statement, and I couldn't help but smile at the charming image it conjured. But that wasn't what I intended to ask. In any case, I decided to play along with the whimsical nature of our conversation. What do you mean with the Queen?
Majesty's favorite anything is the Queen.
Then please tell him thank you. I'm flattered.
I will.
And I would like to know what his favorite food is.
Oh, food?
Why did this question catch him off guard? Majesty must eat.
I'm sure Majesty will love any morsel you give him.
Still, there must be something he likes.
I promise you, he's a good bird. He'll eat anything. Especially anything the Queen offers him.
Suddenly, his lips tightened, and he turned his head away. His jaw clenched as if he were suppressing laughter. Was there some joke about Majesty that I wasn't privy to? Was the bird known for his hearty appetite?
Excuse me, my Queen, I must take my leave. However, I'll be sure to send Majesty to your quarters immediately. I know he will be most pleased.
Henry's abrupt departure left me both bemused and intrigued. The conversation, though seemingly about a pet bird, felt laden with the unspoken. As the prince's broad figure receded down the opulent corridor, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment, albeit mixed with anticipation. The prospect of meeting Majesty, even in Henry's absence, seemed like a small yet significant connection to him, a shared interest that bridged the gap between our constrained interactions thus far. Upon returning to my quarters, I promptly opened the window, creating a passage for Majesty's anticipated arrival. The thought of embracing the warm, feathered creature brought a small smile to my face. But now, inspired by our conversation, I wanted to extend my hospitality further by offering Majesty a delectable treat. To ensure I chose the right food, I decided to consult Sir Artemis, whose experience with birds far exceeded my own. Artemis, you are familiar with the Imperial Guard's messenger birds, correct? What sort of foods do the creatures usually enjoy? Without a moment's hesitation, he answered,
Birds are fond of insects, Your Majesty.
Insects?
Yes, caterpillars, mosquitoes, moths.
I felt a wave of apprehension, or perhaps nausea at the thought, though I tried to mask my growing unease. Sir Artemis, always observant, noted my hesitation.
Why do you ask, my lady?
I was hoping to give Majesty something he'd find particularly delectable.
Ah, yes. Well, considering Majesty is a rather large bird, he might prefer larger insects. We have caterpillars reserved for the messenger birds. I shall fetch some for you.
Are you certain? He chuckled softly at my evident discomfort. The idea of handling caterpillars, even with some sort of implement, unsettled me.
Majesty may be reluctant to eat from a plate, Your Highness. However, if you give the hawk time to adjust, I'm sure he'll come around.
I nodded, albeit reluctantly. After all, I had made a promise to Prince Henry to care for Majesty, and I could not falter simply due to my squeamishness. Before long, Sir Artemis returned with a wooden plate heaped with plump, writhing larvae. It seemed as if he was very much enjoying this.
Are you all right with this, Your Majesty?
I nodded automatically, trying to maintain a semblance of composure. Yet as soon as he exited, I recoiled from the table, horrified at the thought of caterpillars escaping their confines. Majesty is going to eat that. The thought echoed in my mind as I sat hunched on my bed, occasionally glancing at the table to ensure the caterpillars remained in place. Finally, the midnight hawk arrived. However, instead of perching on the windowsill as I had expected, he flew gracefully into the room, circling in a majestic display. His eyes met mine, as if seeking my approval for his splendid entrance. After his grand tour, he landed softly on my knee, I reached out, stroking his neck and back, and he responded with a loud cry, wiggling his tail in delight. You look very handsome today, Majesty. How could one not be both fascinated and enchanted by his presence? After a moment of mutual appreciation, I turned my attention to the daunting task at hand. Majesty's eyes followed my movement intently. I've had something brought in especially for you. I felt a quiver of nerves at the task ahead, yet I was determined. With a gentle brush of his back, accompanied by a cautious embrace, I spoke to the bird. I wanted to give you something to eat. The bird cocked his head, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. Your master says you'll eat anything, I continued, attempting to maintain a semblance of calm, but I knew I was delaying the inevitable. He seemed to query in his own peculiar way. Majesty was skeptical of what he was about to be served. I think he's wrong. I doubt you'll eat just any old thing, but evidently the messenger birds feast on such delicacies. The bird remained silent, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity that belied his avian nature. So I prepared something that big, nice birds like the most. I had a flourish of hope. Majesty's response was an enthusiastic nod, the movement causing his feathers to flutter like the banners in the courtyard on a breezy day. Carefully, I lifted him, his weight familiar and comforting in my arms, and brought him to my desk. Here are some caterpillars, Majesty. I presented the plate of wriggling larvae. Luckily, the larvae were still congregated on the plate, and I set the midnight hawk right before them. However, Majesty recoiled, his eyes blinking rapidly as if in disbelief. Sir Artemis, who had been watching from a respectful distance, had mentioned that Majesty might exhibit doubt if fed in such an unfamiliar manner. Heeding his advice, I stroked the bird's back again, trying to reassure him, and picked up a plump caterpillar with a wooden implement meant for doing just so. A shiver ran down my spine at the feeling of the squishy creature, but I remained steadfast for Majesty's sake. Come, Majesty, eat. Yet the bird drew even further back, his refusal clear in every line of his body. Try it, Majesty, it's okay. I brought the caterpillar as near to my face as I dared in order to show him that they were not only food, but also delicious. Yum! These are my, favorite. However, I fear my true feelings revealed themselves, as I nearly retched at the sight of the wriggling insect. In my attempt to encourage him, I jerked my hand away from my own face and presented the insect to Majesty. Unexpectedly, the caterpillar wriggled with a newfound vigor, then slipped from the tool and landed squarely on Majesty's head. Majesty shrieked, a sound of alarm and surprise that echoed through the chamber. The bird leapt up in a fury of feathers and panic. Majesty, you're all right, calm down. I'm so sorry. I lunged forward, my hands outstretched in a futile attempt to catch him, but the bird was a whirlwind of chaos, flapping madly about the room like a court jester in a frenzied dance. In his haste, he leapt out the window, the caterpillar still clinging to his head like a bizarre crown, and flew away into the vastness of the sky, disappearing from view. The room fell silent, save for the faint rustle of my gown and Sir Artemis's incredulous laughter. The knight, having witnessed the entire spectacle, approached with a bemused expression, his voice tinged with a rare lightness.
My lady, it appears that Majesty is not quite the gourmand we presumed him to be.
I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bubbling up from deep within. Indeed, Sir Artemis. It seems even in the most regal of creatures there lies a penchant for the dramatic. I can't imagine any of your birds have been so keen to turn down a meal you've offered. He chuckled, attempting to keep his knightly composure.
That is correct, Your Majesty. Will that be all for today?
That is all, Sir Artemis. Good night to you. Wait, would you be so kind as to remove that plate of insects from my chambers on your way? Sir Artemis bowed, took hold of the plate, and gently exited my chambers for the night. As the evening descended into night, my thoughts incessantly circled around Majesty. Was it possible that I had chosen the wrong kind of caterpillar? Sir Artemis's birds feasted upon them without ailment. Or was it simply because Majesty was of a different species? The uncertainty nagged at me, a constant whisper in the quiet chambers of my mind. I found no comfort in sleep, my restlessness fueled by the discord with Aldrich. The distrust in his eyes haunted me, a piercing gaze that seemed to question my very essence. Yet in those moments of sorrow, it was the thought of Majesty that offered solace, a balm to the wounds Aldrich had inflicted. Each memory of Majesty's antics gently pushed away the image of the king's troubled face, providing a fleeting escape from the turmoil of my heart. Come morning, with the first rays of dawn peeking through my window, I rose with a singular purpose. After hastily finishing my breakfast, I left my chambers, intent on seeking out Prince Henry. A direct visit to his quarters was unseemly, but I hoped to encounter him in the southern reaches of the palace, a frequent haunt of his during his stay. I need to inquire about Majesty's well-being, I thought, my steps quickening with urgency. As luck would have it, as I stepped out into the fresh morning air, my eyes immediately found Prince Henry. He stood nonchalantly, leaning against a pillar, his gaze fixed on the palace as if lost in contemplation. "Prince Henry," I called out, breaking the stillness of the morning. He turned towards me, his customary bow of greeting conspicuously absent, his expression serious. Without preamble, he addressed me.
I answered wrongly yesterday. Majesty doesn't eat raw food. Apologies for the misconception.
Prince Henry's tone laced with an unexpected earnestness. Well, then I can give him cooked larvae.
No, I mean, he doesn't eat larvae. He actually doesn't eat insects at all. He's a bit of a picky eater, I've realized. Spoiled a bit too much.
I halted, confusion and concern mingling within me. But what does he eat then? Why would he lead me to believe otherwise? He must have known this before answering me the other day. Prince Henry's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a state secret.
Majesty prefers fruits, particularly berries. He has a taste for the sweeter things in life, much like someone else I know. He's been known to pick at caviar from time to time.
I couldn't help but smile at the comparison, though my heart still fluttered with anxiety for Majesty. Thank you, Prince Henry. I shall remember that. I'll be prepared with a nice spread for him next time. He nodded, pleased. Prince Henry, maybe it would be possible if you joined us. I have yet to see both of you together. It would be nice to spend time with you and the bird. Maybe Majesty would feel more comfortable eating with you around.
That would be my pleasure, my lady. Although I'm certain Majesty will be most grateful for your next feast, with or without me. I will be there in spirit, however. I promise you that.
Before I could inquire as to what that meant, Prince Henry bowed and walked away from me, evidently pleased with himself. Curiosity, or was it suspicion, gnawed at me. Why was Prince Henry so reluctant to commit to being with me and Majesty? He was a mercurial man, and if I was being honest, he was driving me mad. At times he seemed to reach out for the connection we had at the ball, or even in the gardens when we found ourselves alone. Why had I not just kissed him then? I had wanted to. I tried to deny it at the time, but it had taken all my strength not to press my lips to his, and I was certain he wouldn't have denied me. But at other times it seemed that Prince Henry truly wished to remain nothing but a secret correspondent. A genuine confidant, yes, but one who was all too aware of coming between me and the king. I wouldn't have admitted it to any other soul in the realm, but the thought of forever keeping a distance from Henry turned my heart to ice.
Rose sat alone in her lavishly adorned chamber, her mind ensnared in a labyrinth of conflicting emotions. She traced her fingers over the amber bracelet that clung to her wrist, a symbol of her tumultuous journey. Despite the luxurious trappings that surrounded her, Rose's thoughts were anchored in a past that refused to release its grip. Aldrich's protection was a beacon in the darkness of her life. He knew of her origins as a runaway slave, yet chose to shield her, cloaking her past in secrecy. How many men had whispered sweet nothings, only to discard her when their own interests were threatened? It was a cruel irony that Aldrich, the Empire's most formidable ruler, chose not to hide behind his power. But the shadows of her past were persistent, nipping at her heels. The shackles of her former life had been loosened, and people had begun to see her as Rose rather than slave. Yet her identity threatened to ensnare her once more, and it was only Aldrich's unwavering affection that had kept her dream alive, especially in the face of Rothescue's machinations. Rose's thoughts drifted to the nobility, who once hung on her every word and smile. What would become of those relationships now that her truth was laid bare? She dreaded meeting the other nobles again, fearing their warm smiles would turn into cold rejection.
No, even if I was a slave, I am the king's concubine now. It won't be the same as before.
She clutched a doll, a delicate creation fashioned by Aldrich himself, its soft fabric and cotton offering little comfort. As she held it close, the door to her chamber creaked open, and Viscountess Verdi stepped inside, her expression clouded with unease.
Viscountess Verdi! Miss Rose, I come with news from the court.
Rose's heart skipped a beat as she braced herself.
Please, tell me.
Verdi took a deep breath before speaking.
The nobles are unsettled. Rumors swirl like autumn leaves in the wind. Some speak of betrayal. What do they say of me? Some view you with suspicion, questioning your rise from obscurity to the king's favor. Others, however, remember your grace and charm. They speak of a woman who overcame her past to stand beside the king.
Rose felt a flicker of hope.
And what of Aldrich? How does he fare amidst this tempest? The king stands resolute. His support for you is unwavering. Yet there are those in the court who question his judgment, whispering that his heart has led him astray.
A silence fell between them, heavy with the weight of unspoken fears and uncertainties. Verdi finally broke the quiet.
Miss Rose, Viscount Rothescue has come to see you. What should I tell him? The Lord! Here!
Rose's voice betrayed a momentary lapse into the past. She had used the title she once reserved for Rothescue, a slip that did not go unnoticed. Viscountess Verdi's expression momentarily revealed surprise, quickly masked by a kind smile. But Rose could sense the unspoken judgment behind it. If Verdi knew of Rothescue's past dealings with Rose, why would she even bring up his name? Wasn't it a subordinate's duty? Her duty? To shield her from such unpleasant encounters? Rose couldn't help but think that had Verdi still been in the Queen's service, she would have shown more discretion. Biting her lip, Rose pondered her next move. She regretted not feigning illness in the king's chambers instead of seeking solitude here. It was a tactical error, leaving her exposed to unwanted encounters. No, the true problem lay with the king. Why did he allow Rothescue such freedom within the palace? Why not banish him, imprison him, or even execute him? Aldrich, with his vast power, was surely capable of such actions. As these thoughts swirled in her mind, Rose fought to hold back tears, her cheeks burning with a mix of shame and frustration. Finally, she turned to Viscountess Verdi, her voice firm.
Tell him to go back from where he came.
Verdi hesitated, her demeanor betraying an inner conflict. Rose's patience snapped.
I said tell him to go back.
Her voice echoed soullessly off the chamber walls, and yet Viscountess Verdi remained motionless, though her next words came out in a shaking whisper.
He said if you don't let him in, you would regret it. He said that. Yes, Miss Rose.
Anger surged within the concubine, lending her a temporary courage. She gritted her teeth, her mind racing with the implications of Rothescue's threat.
How dare he? How dare he wield such threats against me?
Verdi stepped closer, her voice soft yet firm.
Miss Rose, I understand your anger, but perhaps it would be wise to hear him out. We must tread carefully in these delicate matters.
Rose began pacing the room, her thoughts a whirlwind.
But why? Why must I subject myself to his presence? To his manipulations? It's not just about you, Miss Rose. Rothescue holds sway with certain factions. Dismissing him outright could have unforeseen consequences.
Rose stopped, the gravity of Verdi's words sinking in.
So, I am to play the diplomat with a man who sees me as nothing more than a pawn? Sometimes we must engage with those we despise for the greater good.
With a heavy sigh, Rose nodded slowly, while a sense of resignation washed over her.
Very well. Let him in. But make it known that his audience with me will be brief.
As Verdi left to convey her decision, Rose gazed out the window, her reflection staring back at her. In the mirror of the glass, she saw not just a concubine or a former slave, but a woman caught in a trap of her own making.
Let him come then. Let me see his shameless face.
Quickly summoning a barrage of insults to wound and demean, Rose prepared to unleash a torrent of abuse at the slithering man. Yet, when Rothescue sauntered into the room, an ominous smile playing on his lips, her planned insults withered unspoken. Rothescue greeted her with mock reverence. Lady Rose, congratulations! I see you have achieved the noble status of the king's concubine, he smirked. Viscountess Verdi, standing at a tense crossroads between allegiance and fear, exchanged anxious glances between Rose and the Viscount. At Rose's fierce glare, Verdi hastily retreated from the room, leaving the concubine to face her adversary alone. Without being invited, Rothescue plopped down into an empty chair, the air of arrogance thick around him.
Why are you here?
Rose attempted to imitate the Queen's stern tone, aware that her own voice, though charming, lacked the necessary authority. Rothescue chuckled at her effort, enjoying watching her squirm. You've grown to be quite a lady now, Rose.
Do not thoughtlessly say my name. You will no longer address me simply as Rose. It's Miss Rose now.
I'm sure that's true. For the moment.
For the moment? What are you insinuating? Speak quickly and plainly, snake.
Do you know how many years a woman stays as a king's concubine? Rose bit her lip, feeling the sting of his barbed remark. He tapped his fingers against the table, his neck bobbing in time, a predator playing with his prey. Rose knew better than to guess or ask at the answer, and she was somewhat grateful when his gaze then fell upon the bracelet on her wrist. What a beautiful trinket! Is it made of amber? Let me take a look. He reached out greedily, but Rose quickly flung her hand behind her, shielding the bracelet from his grasp. Rothescue's expression flickered to a frown, only to be replaced by a sly smile. The king ordered me to correct my erroneous claim that you were a runaway slave. Now I'm being treated like a fool who cannot even recognize a person's face. Whether your secret will be revealed or not is up to me. I'm thankful for the gold and silver, but it's not quite sufficient. Wouldn't you say? Rose's heart pounded, while her mind raced to comprehend the gravity of his words, dreading what he might be implying.
What do you want, Rothescue?
The Viscount leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. What I want, my dear Miss Rose, is simple. More recognition, more power. You see, in this palace, information is currency, and I happen to be quite wealthy at the moment. Rose stiffened, realizing the precariousness of her position.
You would blackmail the king's concubine. I will have you killed.
Oh, I doubt that, Miss Rose. Rose felt the weight of his gaze, like a vice tightening around her, while Rothescue's smile widened, a predator baring its fangs.
And if I refuse?
Refusal is not a luxury you can afford, my dear. The consequences would be unfortunate for both you and the king.
You wouldn't. I've never known you to act in such a manner, using information as currency. You're bluffing.
Well then, why did I say nothing about the baby? The one you abandoned? Rose felt as if the ground had been ripped from beneath her feet. She thrust her arm out to the stone wall, bracing herself, fearing she would faint without support. She could barely whisper her next words, choked as she was by a torrent of rage and grief.
The baby. My baby. How dare you speak of my child? My baby is dead because of you. You killed my child.
But Rothescue's face remained impassive, his eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. He held up his hands in a grotesque mimicry of innocence. Don't blame me, dear. Rose pushed away from the wall, her body trembling with a barely contained anger.
You can't threaten me with a baby that's already gone. You have nothing.
Rothescue chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. Gone? Are you sure about that, my dear Rose? What kind of man do you take me for? I would not kill my own grandchild, my own blood.
You're lying. I saw the body with my eyes.
Oh, you pathetic girl. If you don't believe me, do you want me to bring it to you? Rose staggered back, her mind reeling at the implications of his words. She stammered, unable to fully grasp the horror of what he was suggesting.
You can't. That's impossible.
Grinning, Rothescue rose from his seat, his movements deliberate and menacing. Oh, but it is very possible, Miss Rose. I believe a reunion between you and your baby would give you, the king, and might I add, the queen, much to discuss. Rose stared, horrified, into Rothescue's dark, dead eyes, seeking any sort of humanity within their depths. But when she found none, she sank to her knees, her body racked with sobs. The revelation of her child's fate, the weight of Rothescue's threats, and the realization of just how vulnerable her position within the palace's walls really was, crashed over her and darkened her future to ash once more. Rose sobbed on the floor of her chambers, her heart pounding, while the Viscount Rothescue continued to tower over her, his presence an oppressive force. She had thought her child forever lost, a wound that gnawed at her soul. Yet Rothescue's confidence unnerved her, planting seeds of doubt in her mind. And Rose, think carefully about the details of this situation. For one, I cannot simply disappear from the festivities. What would people think if I were to suddenly leave after I announced that you were a runaway slave? Wouldn't they conclude that the king was trying to hide something? Rose, who had grown accustomed to Rothescue speaking as if he would trample her underfoot, was taken aback by the saccharine shift in his tone. It was almost pleasing, yet surely laced with poison. She swallowed hard, her throat tight with anxiety, but the Viscount cut her off, circling her like a predator. Besides, one can't live so innocently in the imperial palace. So much deception to do. How could you leave that kind of work to someone who doesn't know your secret?
What do you mean?
Rothescue sneered, leaning in closer, his breath cold against her skin. You foolish creature. I'm saying you should direct that hostile glare towards someone else. I already know everything about you. In other words, I can perfectly be your eyes and ears.
I don't need someone like you.
Rothescue tutted at her, condescending. Playing dress-up doesn't make you a lady, Miss Rose. Perhaps after a time you will be able to shake off the past and be accepted amongst the nobles, but by then, would you still be a concubine that the king loves? Rose trembled, her facade cracking.
The king says he only loves me.
Maybe. Maybe not. Who can really tell what a king's whims are day to day? But I'm not here to discuss his whims. I'm here to discuss yours. You haven't forgotten my son, have you? At the mention of the Viscount's son, Rose bit her lip, a pang of sorrow stabbing at her heart. The man who had once whispered vows of love to her had gradually changed as the birth of Rose's baby approached. He started out persistent and stubborn, but over time he had grown weary, his passion fading like the last embers of a dying fire. Rothescue watched Rose closely as she remembered days gone by, a cruel smile playing on his lips. You see, Rose, my son, he once loved you. Or so he thought. But love, especially in our circles, is fleeting. It changes. It withers. And you, my dear, you are a reminder of that bitter truth. And so is your lost baby. Rose felt a surge of anger, but it was quickly replaced by an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Nonetheless, she pulled herself to her feet with her fists clenched, the memory of that harrowing day engulfing her. After her baby had died, a part of her had clung to a desperate hope. She had pleaded with him, the Viscount's son, to run away with her, to start anew away from the suffocating intrigues of the palace. His rejection in the wake of that devastating loss had cut her to her very soul. His words still haunted her. I love you, but I don't want to change my life for you. When we met, you looked like you were stuck in a mire, and I wished to save you from it. But I was wrong. You are the Maya, and I can't save you from it. Any children born between us will be dragged into that same darkness and be trapped in it forever. Rose's heart ached at the memory. It wasn't just the baby she had lost that miserable day. It was the illusion of love, of escape from the cage in which she found herself. As if sensing her turmoil, Viscount Rothescue continued to probe her wounds with his blade-like tongue, his words dripping with venom. The more you are loved by the king, the more the other poor, beautiful women will look at your situation and hope. To escape their Maya, they'll want to latch on to the king as well.
Then...
Rose began, but her voice trailed off, choked by the overwhelming reality of her situation.
Then what?
Greedy nobles, foreign lords, and anyone interested in political collusion will send all kinds of beautiful women to the king. And many of those women will have education and status. It's not difficult to imagine that if a king has taken one concubine, that he will take another, and another. Rose fell silent, the truth of his words echoing in her mind like a death knell.
Just as the Queen suggested.
You are not a royal, Rose. If you lose the king's love, you will go back into slavery. Rose's eyes burned with unshed tears.
If that's the case, then it's no use whether you help me or not.
No. It's up to you and your ability to remain in his favor, but I can make sure no other concubines will come around. Or last.
How?
First, you have to let me in. Rose took a step back, her mind racing. To align with Rothescue was to dance with the devil himself. Yet, what choice did she have? Viscount Rothescue, his posture a calculated display of feigned humility, bent slightly at the waist, lowering his voice to a whisper that was both conspiratorial and chilling. If you help me and my family come to the center of power, I will play the role as your parent. Your child is my grandchild, and what is good for it is good for me. The words, under different circumstances, might have sounded tempting, a promise of protection and power. But coming from Rothescue, they were tainted, a hollow offer from a man whose ambition knew no bounds. How could a man of his stature accept a former slave as his daughter-in-law? Rose could almost hear the mocking laughter of the court, a chorus of disdain for such a ludicrous pairing. Despite the turmoil raging within her, Rose's expression remained stoic, a mask hiding her revulsion and fear. Rothescue, observing her carefully, let out a low chuckle, a sound devoid of genuine mirth. You don't believe me, but you'll know at a glance that your child looks like you. Rose felt as if a vice had tightened around her heart. She stood frozen, her body rigid, as if she had lost all control over it. Words failed her, trapped in the prison of her throat, unable to escape. The Viscount, sensing her strain, straightened up with a satisfied smile, his eyes gleaming with the triumph of a predator cornering its prey. Think carefully, Miss Rose. I will continue to pretend to be an idiot who can't recognize faces, as His Majesty commanded, until I hear from you again. His parting words hung in the air like a shroud, leaving Rose in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The offer, as vile as it was, held a twisted form of security. Yet, accepting it meant binding herself to Rothescue, a man as dangerous as he was influential. It was a devil's bargain, one that threatened to ensnare her. Rose stood alone,
her mind racing, caught between the desire for safety for her child and the loathing for the man who offered it. The choice before her was not one of freedom, but of which chains to bear.
The winter solstice celebrations, a 3-day spectacle of grandeur and opulence, had drawn to a close. The castle's halls, which had echoed with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses, now settled into a quieter rhythm. Most guests had returned to their homes, their departures leaving a noticeable void. However, a few, including Prince Henry, had requested an extension to their stay. As I reviewed and filled out the forms for these remaining guests, my eyes paused on Prince Henry's form, noting that his leave date was marked undetermined. A smile found its way to my lips, unbidden. I reminisced about an earlier conversation regarding Prince Henry's insistence that Majesty did not consume raw food. Curious, I had consulted an ornithologist, inquiring if there existed a bird with such a peculiar diet. His response had been incredulous.
A bird that doesn't eat raw food? Do you mean it cooks its food? Or such a bird would tip the academic world, Your Majesty.
The notion was absurd, of course, yet it lingered in my thoughts. Perhaps Prince Henry, in his care for Majesty, had inadvertently been feeding him incorrectly. Majesty, I recalled, seemed to have an aversion to insects. I speculated, half amused, half serious. Maybe the person responsible for feeding Majesty had been cutting up the caterpillars? It would explain Majesty's surprise at the sight of a live one. I resolved to conduct a small experiment of sorts. Later, as I encountered Prince Henry on my way back from work, I seized the opportunity to take a stroll with him, intending to discuss my plan. It was important, he knew, lest he misinterpret my actions as an attempt to feed Majesty strange food. As I detailed my intentions, Prince Henry made a peculiar, almost pained groaning noise. Prince, are you okay?
Please, can you just give him water?
I tried to reason with him. An ornithologist.
Eastern birds and Western birds have different temperaments. Western birds eat cooked food.
I stared at him, my expression one of skepticism. The claim seemed far-fetched, bordering on the absurd. Prince Henry looked at me, his eyes imploring.
You can just pat his head. That's enough.
I was taken aback. His request was simple, yet it spoke volumes of his affection for Majesty. The bond between them was evidently strong, and his concern for his well-being was genuine, albeit expressed in an unorthodox manner. The question lingered in the air between us. Did Prince Henry not like others feeding Majesty? I recalled a story I once heard about a dog that would eat only what his owner provided. Perhaps Majesty the bird shared a similar bond with Prince Henry. A smile crept onto my face at the thought. Though I wondered if my musings were bordering on rudeness, given the tension that still held Prince Henry's features taut. I'm sorry. I attempted to break the silence that had fallen between us.
It's fine. I'm sure feeding him is lovely, but he's already quite happy, I can assure you.
I'm sorry anyway. I felt a genuine need to apologize, sensing there was more to his discomfort than met the eye. He sighed, a gesture heavy with unspoken thoughts, and ran his hand through his blonde hair.
There are a lot of constraints.
Constraints? What could he possibly mean? Constraints. But he changed the subject.
It's Majesty's birthday soon, isn't it?
It's the bird's birthday. Prince Henry burst out laughing at my misunderstanding, then corrected himself.
I meant your birthday, Your Majesty.
How did you know? My smile was weak. Large celebrations were typically held for the birthdays of kings and queens, but mine had always fallen too close to the winter solstice. Holding grand festivities in quick succession could strain public opinion and burden the nobility. Since my childhood, My birthdays had been marked by a more intimate affair. A simple dinner with family and acquaintances. Prince Henry, of course, was unaware of this tradition. Seeing my awkward smile, Prince Henry stopped walking and offered a warm grin.
I know the day, but I still don't know what you would like.
You mean as a gift? I was caught off guard by his thoughtfulness.
I'm your friend. I want to spend that day with you. Don't you know that?
His words were sincere, a gesture of friendship that transcended the formalities of our positions. I was about to respond when a rustling sound interrupted us. Turning my gaze from Prince Henry, I spotted a figure I had not expected to see. Aldrich. Accompanied only by a single knight, he walked alone. His gaze met mine, and then shifted to Prince Henry. Aldrich called out, his voice carrying a mix of emotions.
Bronwyn.
Aldrich's stern voice cut through the air, his frown deepening as he addressed me.
You're with him?
There was an unmistakable edge to his words, a mix of surprise and disapproval, which caused me to hesitate. My feelings toward Aldrich remained a tangle of confusion and unresolved emotions. Finally, I offered a blunt reply. Yes. The simplicity of my answer seemed to only intensify the furrow on Aldrich's brow. He turned to Prince Henry, his tone sharpening.
How long are you going to remain here, Prince? It seems plainly obvious to me that you have overstayed your welcome.
Henry, unfazed by the tension, responded with a broad smile, masking any remnants of the argument he had with the king just days prior.
A fortnight. Perhaps more, I think. I quite like it here. The hospitality has been one to remember. For all newcomers, apparently.
The insinuation was bold, and Aldrich's response was swift and pointed.
Our hospitality has its limits. And isn't that ill-advised, considering that the King of the Celestial Isles is not in the best of health? It hardly seems ideal for the Crown Prince and rumoured heir to the throne to stay away. Thank you for your concern, Your Highness. However, the Western King has recovered much of his strength. He is supportive of my visit to your fair Elisaria. I imagine the stories I return with will bring him much entertainment.
Prince Henry's smile was unwavering, a masterful display of overt diplomacy, and yet the air grew heavy with strained silence, the unspoken animosity between the two men hanging like a thick fog. Feeling my skin crawl at the growing tension, I decided to extricate myself from the situation. Your Majesty, Prince, I think it's best that I take my leave. My words were quick, a bid to avoid further discomfort, but Aldrich, perhaps feeling slighted, reached out for me as I turned and caught my wrist.
Bronwyn.
But he couldn't finish his sentence, instead becoming painfully aware of Henry's presence. His next words were directed at him.
I must speak with the Queen. Alone. I ask you now to be on your way.
And yet, instead of doing as he was commanded, or even addressing the king, Henry shifted his gaze to me.
And what are your wishes, Majesty?
I stuttered, keenly aware of my position between these two men, and the consequences of any misstep I took. But Aldrich's patience was waning, and not with me.
Prince Henry, this is not a matter for discussion. I must speak to the Queen, my wife, and you will take your leave now. Or shall I summon my guard?
He then stepped between me and Prince Henry, offering his arm to me in a gesture that left little room for refusal. I glanced at the prince, noticing his lips pressed tightly together, a silent plea evident in his eyes, urging me not to go with Aldrich. Despite this, I reluctantly placed my hand on my husband's arm. I had no other choice. The moment Aldrich felt my touch, I could sense more than see his satisfied grin.
You'd do well to remember, Prince Henry. to remember your manners around Bronwyn. She is no tour guide for a wayward prince. She is my wife and queen."
Aldrich's words were laced with warning, with a protective edge. To assert his claim over him, he then wrapped his arm possessively around my shoulder and led the way down the corridor and away from the prince. Resigned, I sighed and began to walk in step with him, feeling the weight of his arm as a tangible reminder of our connection. Aldrich was the man I married, the man I loved. This was the king I knew before that damned hunt and that damned trap in the forest. Before her. I felt safe under his protection. I missed it. Then my heart warmed to see that that man was still inside somewhere. But that warmth quickly turned to sadness. It wasn't until Prince Henry was out of sight that Aldrich finally dropped his arm. He was irritated and did not bother to hide it.
"Why do you insist on spending time in the presence of that womanizer? Don't you see how ridiculous it makes you appear, Bronwyn? To be salivating over him when he's clearly playing you simply to bed you."
I reached back to slap Aldrich for that remark, but he caught my wrist in a hard grip.
"Don't, Bronwyn."
I wrenched my wrist from his grasp. "Of course. Your mind, you go straight to bedding someone. A woman can simply spend time in the company of another man."
"Someone else will entertain the prince from now onwards. There are many other people in the palace, yet he wants the queen to guide him. Trust me, it's not my mind who is thinking of your bed."
Prince Henry is the successor to a powerful nation with extensive wealth and military power. We don't have to be on bad terms. There is a need for diplomacy, and these are my responsibilities. Aldrich's gaze shifted to the knight nearby, who took the cue, bowed respectfully, and stepped away, giving us privacy. Aldrich then leaned against a pillar, his posture relaxed, but his eyes fixed on me with a reproachful stare. I sensed that his discomfort stemmed not only from my interactions with Prince Henry, but also from the latter's reputation, and the way he had demeaned Rose.
"I'll speak plainly. I don't want you to take care of him. Henry is openly disrespectful. His actions make me look weak, both as your husband, but also as the king."
I had anticipated this. His protectiveness, though sometimes overbearing, was not entirely surprising. He smiled grimly, a bittersweet expression that underscored the sincerity of his words. "I understand your concern, but we must consider the political implications. Our relations with Prince Henry's nation are crucial." Aldrich's expression softened slightly, a sign that he understood the complexities of the situation. Or so I thought. His next words soon showed me that he wasn't being guided by logic or diplomacy, but jealousy.
"I know, but it doesn't sit well with me. The thought of you spending time with him."
"I assure you, my interactions with Prince Henry are purely diplomatic." I hoped to ease his worries. I hoped he couldn't hear the lies in my voice. Aldrich nodded slowly, though whether he believed me or not I couldn't tell.
"Despite all we've been through recently, I hope you know that I trust you. It's him I don't trust."
Trust. Trust. Like how I trusted you to return without a concubine. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my words. And suddenly all I wanted to do was wound Aldrich the same way he had me. He is quite handsome, you know, Prince Henry. He treats me like a queen should be treated. He also treats me like a lady, something I have long missed. You could learn from him if your ego were open to it.
"I am still the king, Bronwyn. You will continue to respect me. Besides, it seems it is you who has learned from him, and I do not approve of what he teaches you. He may have a handsome face, and he may follow you around like a dog, but the implications are clear, and I don't have to spell them out to you. He will only bring continued scandal if you associate with him."
I laughed, my voice a mix of disbelief and annoyance. How dare he accuse me of scandal after all he has put me through recently? He should have considered his own actions more carefully if he was so concerned with appearances. Scandal! You worry about scandal? Now!
Other noblewomen and young ladies may attach themselves to this womanizer and may fall into his bed. However, you, the Queen, are one of the most honorable people in this country. You represent the Empire. Where is the imperial household's honor if you are so easily swayed by this rake?
I bristled at his insinuation. My honor is not tarnished by talking to him. If you cannot see this relationship for what it is, then that reflects on your conscience, not mine. All you see is a threat to another one of your possessions. If Rose...
This again. If this is about Rose...
Because she is the reason why you despise Prince Henry. I see it in your eyes, Aldrich, despite your attempts to feign ignorance. I could see right through him, his facade as transparent as glass. My gaze bore into him, unyielding and resolute. Aldrich regarded me, holding my gaze, meeting my fury with his own. Finally, he let out a frustrated sigh, his facade crumbling.
You truly despise the concubine, don't you?
I couldn't help but retort, my voice tinged with a mix of anger and exhaustion. What's to like about the woman who has poisoned my husband against me? Who is ruining a perfectly good friendship with a prince from a foreign land? Who risks ruining our empire? Aldrich's defense was immediate, yet it sounded hollow even to his ears.
No, Bronwyn. You hate her, plain and simple. You're using her as a shield at every turn. You do well to admit this to yourself.
The conversation was draining, each word a heavy weight upon my shoulders. I am weary of this, Aldrich. I'm done. But as I pushed past him, he reached out for me once more.
Listen to me, Bronwyn. I'm trying to speak with you, and I don't feel you are listening. About Rose.
I yanked my hand from his grasp, but stopped as Aldrich cleared his throat. His voice, once stern, now carried a softness I hadn't heard in a long while.
Before, I spoke too harshly to you.
I turned, confusion and curiosity mingling within me. What are you referring to? His words were hesitant, a rarity for a man of his stature.
3 days ago, when Viscount Rothescue arrived, I was upset. I'm sorry.
I stared at him, searching for sincerity in his eyes. He was apologizing to me. Does he actually care about my feelings, or is this another game? My response was cautious, unsure of the ground on which we stood. Yes. Aldrich seemed to struggle, his gaze shifting from me to the ground, a silent battle within him. I couldn't help but ponder his behavior. He loses his temper when it comes to Rose, but he comes back to his senses in about 3 days. It was a pattern I had started to notice, one I should remember for future encounters. I offered a mechanical smile, a nod, a silent acknowledgement of his apology, and turned to leave. He called out again, his voice carrying a hint of something unspoken, a plea perhaps, or a hidden sorrow.
My queen.
The grand hall echoed with the sound of our hollow voices, a stark reminder of the chasm that had grown between us. But as I began to leave once again, Aldrich's voice, softer now, yet laced with a hint of desperation, called out to me. Halting my steps, I turned back, a flicker of curiosity alight within me. Aldrich approached, his movements hesitant, as if treading on fragile ground.
It will be your birthday soon. We've been estranged from each other lately. Perhaps we can go to the villa to reconcile. What say you?
His proposal hung in the air, delicate as a spider's silk. I regarded him with a mix of surprise and skepticism. The villa? You speak of reconciliation as if it were a mere stroll in the gardens. Aldrich's eyes searched mine, seeking an anchor in the stormy seas between us.
I know I've been distant, and for that, I am truly sorry. The villa, it holds memories, happier times for us both. Maybe it can be a haven for us to find our way back to each other.
I pondered his words, the weight of our shared history pressing upon my heart. A haven, you say? Yet can a place alone mend what has been broken? I will consider your offer, Aldrich. But know this. Reconciliation is not a path walked lightly. It requires more than just a change of scenery. Aldrich nodded, understanding the depth of my words.
I know, Bronwyn, and I am willing to do what it takes. Your happiness, it has always been important to me.
As I turned away once more, his words echoed in my heart, a blend of hope and uncertainty for what the future might hold. The path to reconciliation was unclear, fraught with shadows of the past. Yet in his words there lay a glimmer of light, a possibility of a bridge over the chasm that had grown between us. But to be honest, the chasm between me and Aldrich seemed too vast, too entrenched to be bridged by a mere visit to the villa. Yet to refuse his offer would only serve to deepen the rift, casting darker shadows on our already strained relationship. The contradiction I felt was too strong to be rash. Despite Aldrich's heart wandering to another, it was my duty as queen to uphold the image of a united front. Aldrich's voice pulled me back from my reverie, a gentle prompt for a response.
Bronwyn.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Aldrich's face lit up with a smile, a rare moment of genuine warmth breaking through the cool facade. He extended his arm, a gesture of unity, albeit a fragile one.
Shall we walk together?
Of course. Accepting his arm, we began to stroll through the palace grounds, our steps in sync, but our hearts miles apart. As we walked, the echoes of our shoes on the stone path were the only sounds that filled the air. The gentle breeze caressed our faces, a bittersweet reminder of days long past. I remembered walks like these, in a time when our silences were comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding and shared dreams. Those days now seemed like distant echoes, lost in the maze of time and heartache. Glancing sideways at Aldrich, I noted the lines of concern etched on his face, the weight of his crown seemingly heavier than before. Do you remember, Aldrich, the early days of our walks, when the world seemed simpler, and our biggest worry was which path to take through these gardens?
I do. Those were indeed simpler times. Times I often find myself longing for.
And now our paths seem laden with thorns and shadows. Do you think we can ever find our way back to those simpler days? Aldrich's grip on my arm tightened ever so slightly, a sign of his own inner turmoil.
I hope so, Bronwyn. I truly do. The path may be difficult, but perhaps in seeking it, we might rediscover something lost along the way.
As we walked, the setting sun cast long shadows across the gardens, a mirror to the shadows in our hearts. The future was uncertain, the path to reconciliation unclear. But in this moment, we walked together, a king and a queen, bound by duty, yet yearning for a past simplicity that seemed as distant as the fading light. Aldrich and I stood across from each other, two opposing forces contained within the castle walls, the tension between us deepening. The king broke the silence with a query that caught me off guard.
Did you know that the Grand Duke Bjorn is still here at the palace?
Yes, of course. My mind had skimmed over the documents detailing his stay, yet Aldrich's sudden mention of him piqued my curiosity. My gaze shifted to his, searching for an explanation. He shuffled his feet before responding.
Bjorn wants to open diplomatic relations between Ret and the Wall continent.
Is that the purpose of his extended visit?
The officials are divided on its merits. Rhett is captivating, yet so different from Wall. The geographical distance limits our influence over either one of them.
I wasn't certain why Aldrich felt the need to discuss such diplomacy with me, now of all times. But the familiarity of working together struck me as comforting. It reminded me of how well we used to function together as rulers of this land, intuitively knowing and understanding the other's mind, able to make decisions that would influence nations with nothing but the smallest of glances shared between us. Venturing into such a trade would indeed strain our resources. There may be another perspective to consider.
Precisely. There are countless factors to consider. What are your thoughts, my queen? You are still my wisest advisor in the court. I want you to know this.
I leaned back, my fingers tracing the edge of the table. I've always enjoyed strategizing. I've always been very skilled in the art. Grand Duke Bjorn, despite his origins, has ties to Elisaria through his education at the academy. His unique position and understanding of both cultures could bridge the gap. While Rhett's customs may be strange to us, his insights could prove invaluable. Elisaria stands to gain significantly from this alliance. We shouldn't dismiss the opportunity lightly. Aldrich listened intently, nodding in agreement, his eyes probing mine. But instead of dwelling on my response, he subtly steered the conversation in another direction.
Have you ever spoken privately with Grand Duke Bjorn?
Of course I had. Grand Duke Bjorn, a man who had openly criticized my handling of the Rose situation. Was that brief exchange considered a private conversation? Is Aldrich testing me? Only briefly. Our encounter was unexpected and somewhat contentious.
Contentious, you say? In what manner?
He expressed disapproval of my approach towards Rose. Evidently, in his country, they handle things in a much more, direct way.
And what way is that?
Trust me, Aldrich, you don't want to know.
Bronwyn, I'm not some wilting flower. Tell me, how did this Duke feel you should be handling the situation?
He said in his country a queen betrayed in such a way would simply murder the concubine to reclaim her rightful place by the king's side. Aldrich paled, as I knew he would.
And how did you respond to his criticisms?
I defended my actions, yet his words gave me pause. Not in the way you think. He expressed genuine concern for the stability of our realm, a worry that I likewise share. Aldrich pushed away from me then, pacing the room. It was in moments such as these when I became aware of his regal and commanding presence. Not only did his physicality demand attention, but his bearing did as well. It wasn't a surprise that knights, subjects, and warriors alike pledged their allegiance to him. Aldrich turned back to me.
Interesting. His perspective might be more nuanced than we initially perceived, and his interest in our affairs. Does it not intrigue you?
It does, though his involvement could be more than mere diplomacy. There might be layers we haven't yet uncovered.
Bjorn mentioned that if we were to initiate diplomatic relations with Rhett, he specifically requested your involvement.
He did? Why?
Yes, he was quite adamant. He expressed a desire for you to attend the next meeting. It seems he values your perspective quite highly.
Aldrich watched me closely, his gaze fixed on mine as if trying to unravel my thoughts. The thought of being personally involved in such a critical discussion was unexpected to say the least, though I had often played a part in difficult political discussions. But why me specifically? Our prior interaction was anything but cordial. Aldrich leaned against a stone column and crossed his arms over his chest.
Perhaps he recognizes your influence and insight. Or maybe there's more to his request. Did he give any indication of his motives?
I shook my head slowly. Aldrich's brow furrowed slightly in response. None. He was rather cryptic. Yet his criticism of my handling of the Rose situation was quite direct.
Direct, you say?
That's unusual for him. Bjorn is typically more reserved, preferring to maneuver behind the scenes.
Yes, it was uncharacteristically blunt. It makes me wonder if there's an ulterior motive behind his request for my involvement. What could he be planning?
Indeed, that is the question. His actions suggest a strategy, but to what end? Does he seek to leverage your position for Rhett's benefit? Surely you have an intuition into the matter. You usually do with such things.
I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper, always wary of unseen ears within the palace walls. We must tread carefully, wisely. Bjorn is a skilled tactician. If he wants me involved, it's because he believes it will serve him. We need to understand what he's truly after.
Agreed. Your presence at the meeting could be advantageous, but we must be prepared for any eventuality. Please, Bronwyn, be cautious.
Was Aldrich protecting me? I hadn't felt the shield of his care or worry for some time now, and it was everything I could do not to run into his arms just to feel the warmth of his strong embrace. But of course everything was different between us now. I straightened my back and solidified my resolve. Very well, I'll meet with the Grand Duke and find out what he's up to. As Aldrich stood to leave, he paused, giving me a reassuring look.
You have navigated treacherous waters before, my queen. Keep your wits about and you'll do fine. And if you need me, Bronwyn, I'll be there for you.
I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision and struggling with my emotions. I liked this Aldrich. I missed this Aldrich. However, from the corner of my eye, I swore I saw movement out of the leaded glass window. Was I mistaken? Or was that Majesty flying away? I needed air after my conversation with Aldrich had left my head spinning. Without any destination in mind, I let my feet carry me where they would, and soon I found myself in the palace gardens. My path was aimless as my thoughts drifted between political intrigue and the looming shadow of my birthday celebration. As these musings swirled in my mind, I couldn't help but feel a tinge of skepticism. The idea of spending my birthday at the villa with Aldrich seemed idyllic, but the likelihood of Rose, ever eager to insert herself into our lives, turning the stay into a trio, was high. The mere thought of her presence intruding on what should be a private affair was enough to fray my nerves. Lost in these contemplations, I approached the fountain, and was suddenly halted by an unexpected sight. Prince Henry was there, sitting exactly where I had left him earlier. I had assumed he would have taken a walk, or returned to his chambers by now. What could have possibly held him here? He turned his head towards me with a smile.
Majesty.
Why haven't you left yet? I noticed his hand idly playing with the water from the fountain. He withdrew his fingers from the waters and looked up at me, his eyes sparkling with a softness that took me aback.
Can I tell you the truth? I was waiting for you to come back.
I gasped softly, taken by surprise. His words, so unexpected, sent a ripple through my heart. Seeing the effect he had on me, he added one more thing with a wry smile.
When one gets lost, one should stay where they are.
You don't know the way back?
Not intuitively.
I reached into my gown and pulled out a handkerchief, offering it to him. It was the same handkerchief, my favourite, that Aldrich had gifted me a few years back. Here, for your hand. He accepted it with a grateful smile, drying his hand before tucking the handkerchief carefully away. Our eyes met, and in that moment something unspoken passed between us.
You seem troubled, Majesty. Is something weighing on your mind?
It's just... my birthday is approaching, and the plans seem to be getting more complicated than I anticipated.
Ah, birthdays can indeed be a source of unexpected strain. Is there any way I can ease your burden?
I appreciate your kindness, Prince Henry. But it's not just the celebration. It's the people involved that make it complicated.
You're referring to a certain thorny rose, aren't you?
Must it be so obvious? Henry chuckled softly.
It's quite evident the tension she brings into your life. I've seen how she affects the atmosphere around you. It must be trying to constantly have her presence looming over your personal affairs.
It is. She has a way of intruding. And now with the stay at the villa.
A trip you're supposed to take with King Aldrich. Alone.
Yes, it was meant to be a private getaway. But I fear it will turn into something else entirely, knowing Rose.
Perhaps, my queen, you need a moment away from all this. A moment to breathe, to be yourself without the shadows of court life looming over you.
That sounds like a distant dream.
Sometimes dreams have a way of turning into reality. If you ever wish for such a moment, know that I would be honored to provide it.
As I looked into Henry's eyes, and as much as a fire burned within me to continue going down this path, duty compelled me to change the direction of this conversation. I extended my hand, a hint of embarrassment colouring my tone. My handkerchief. He chuckled, a warm, light-hearted sound that eased the tension in the air.
Don't worry, I'll return it to you after I wash it.
It's fine, I can take care of it.
What better excuse to see each other again? Wouldn't you agree?
I found myself nodding, drawn in by his charm. Yet his words from earlier echoed in my mind, casting a shadow over this light moment. Prince Henry, about my birthday. I'm afraid we won't be able to spend time together and share a meal.
Why not?
His expression faltered slightly, a flicker of disappointment passing through his eyes. The trip to the villa. I will be away.
Ah.
He blinked, processing this new information, before turning slightly away from me, so I couldn't properly see the expression on his face. His company had become a surprising source of comfort to me, and I hated to disappoint him. But yet I remained silent, torn between the duties of my position and the budding connection I felt with the prince. I didn't dare call it anything else. Henry's presence, once an unexpected disturbance, had grown into something I found myself increasingly drawn to. I apologize, Henry.
No, it's your birthday. You needn't feel sorry for me. In fact, I must insist that you don't be sorry. I wouldn't want to impose upon you or cause any discomfort.
It's not that, it's just that
You... what?
I hesitated, my heart racing. I find your company refreshing. Henry's smile returned, but this time it was tinged with a hint of sadness.
I understand. The duties of royalty often leave little room for personal desires. Even brief moments like these are precious, aren't they?
Yes, they are. As the conversation drifted to lighter topics, I couldn't help but feel a sense of longing. The simplicity of our interaction, the ease with which we conversed, was a stark contrast to the often stifling formality of my life as a queen, and life with Aldrich. As the evening shadows grew longer, casting a soft glow over the garden, I realized that this encounter with Prince Henry would linger. His presence had stirred something within me, and when we parted ways, I smiled inwardly to myself, knowing that Henry still held the handkerchief within his firm grasp, knowing that we would meet again.
In the dimly lit chamber, Haxon observed Prince Henry with a mixture of perplexity and awe. Before the prince lay an array of jeweled rings, each one a storied artifact, shimmering with the allure of ancient legends. Henry, usually discreet with his enchanted possessions, was scrutinizing each ring with an intensity that suggested a decision of great consequence. Haxon, unable to contain his curiosity, broke the silence. "What is all this? Are you turning into a great miser on me?" "Haxon, I'm in no mood to jest. It's her birthday, and I think a ring would be fitting." "Queen Bronwyn's?" Henry's hand lingered over a particularly radiant ring. But how did you come to know of this? And isn't such a gift excessively grand? Elisaria may hold prestige, but so do the Celestial Isles. There is no need for such an extravagant gesture.
Henry carefully placed the rings back into his pouch, his expression unreadable.
I'll choose later without your incessant questioning. You can be quite a nag, Haxon. I haven't asked for nor needed your opinions on this matter.
Henry then withdrew something entirely different. A handkerchief, delicately embroidered and clearly of significant value. Haxon eyed the fabric curiously. What's that? What does it look like? There, I'm opening the door for your opinion. I hope you're happy.
Is it a handkerchief?
Why, how astute, dear Haxon. However, it isn't just any old handkerchief. It's a precious handkerchief. Before waiting for the knight's response, Henry deftly drew a symbol in the air, and in a flash transformed into the Midnight Hawk, Bronwyn's handkerchief still clutched in his beak. He fluttered in front of Haxon, entirely unperturbed, pointing a talon at his own neck.
You want me to tie it there?
With a nod from the bird, Haxon carefully fastened the handkerchief around the hawk's neck, receiving a feathery smack from its tail in response. Prince Henry, now adorned with the handkerchief, soared out of the window into the twilight sky. Haxon watched him disappear, his frown deepening. The handkerchief, Haxon noticed, bore the embroidered letter B, a detail that did not escape his keen observation.
Henry is visiting the Queen.
After my encounter with Prince Henry, I found myself in the grand library of the palace, surrounded by tomes and scrolls that spoke of distant lands and ancient times. I was careful to avoid the corner in which I found Aldrich alone all those weeks ago, when he had rejected my advances out of fear of disloyalty to his damned concubine. I tried to focus on my books, but my thoughts drifted back to the enigmatic prince and the charged moments we shared in the gardens. I found myself wondering what the touch of his hand would feel like upon my skin, how the heat from his lips would feel upon mine. I shook my head. Enough, Bronwyn. This path will lead neither you nor the kingdom anywhere good. Pushing these distractions aside, I focused on my immediate task, delving into the mysteries of Ret and the surrounding continents. Grand Duke Bjorn's words echoed in my mind. He had dismissed my previous readings as fanciful, yet my source, the travelogue, remained the most comprehensive collection of information on Ret we had. My curiosity was piqued. I sought to unravel the true nature of this foreign land, hoping to understand the motives behind the Grand Duke's summons. My nerves were still frayed at the thought of that upcoming summit. I couldn't help but feel that I was walking into a pit of vipers. Seated on an ornate bench, the aged pages of the travelogue spread before me, I prepared to delve deep into study, but my efforts were interrupted by a faint tapping at the window. Turning, I saw Majesty, perched on the sill, his wings a display of splendor. Around his neck he wore a handkerchief, unmistakably mine. I stood to open the window and admit the bird into the inner sanctum of the library, and when he had landed once more, I pointed to the fine cloth. Did Prince Henry adorn you with this? The handkerchief seemed to hold a secret, whisper of desire. As I reached out to Majesty, stroking his back, I searched for a note, a message hidden in his plumage, but today there was none. Are you here to flaunt your beauty, so that I can gaze into your violet eyes and be mesmerized by those pools that hold stories untold? Or are you simply here to return this token to me? I adored teasing Majesty. I showered his head with kisses. Ah, you are so handsome, especially adorned with this particular handkerchief. The handkerchief felt too precious to remove. As I caressed Majesty's back, a faint, pleasing scent enveloped me, stirring emotions and awakening a yearning deep within. A strange thought struck me. Majesty smelled good. It was an unusual realization, one that drew me closer to him. I inhaled deeply, and to my surprise, The scent was reminiscent of Prince Henry. Could he have washed the handkerchief and added his scent to it? The thought was both charming and disconcerting. I whispered into his ear, a playful smile on my lips. You smell like Prince Henry, Majesty. Startled, Majesty unfolded his wings in shock, covering his feet with them before opening his eyes wide in an almost human expression of surprise. Majesty? He trembled and hopped back towards the window. Had I scared him? Was I overly affectionate this time? His reaction puzzled me. Was it something I said? Or was there a deeper meaning to his behavior? Are you going already? I opened my arms, hoping he would stay a while longer. But to my surprise, Majesty stiffened like ice, a clear refusal. Bewildered, I watched as Majesty prepared to take flight. My mind raced with questions. Was Majesty merely a bird, or a messenger, or something else? Was I reading too much into a simple gesture? The next moment, when I looked up, Majesty was already soaring away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The library suddenly felt more confining, its walls echoing with the unspoken. The scent on the handkerchief lingered in the air, a tantalizing reminder of Prince Henry, stirring desire within me that I dared not fully acknowledge. The library, once a refuge, now felt like a cage, trapping me with my thoughts and unanswered questions. I was now the bird in the cage. The line between reality and imagination had blurred. With a heavy heart, I returned to my studies, the travelogue's words swimming before my eyes. Yet in the back of my mind, I couldn't escape the memory of Prince Henry's touch.
In the solitude of his chamber, Prince Henry stood in contemplative silence, the handkerchief still clasped in his hand. His cheeks burned with the memory of Bronwyn's whispered words, words intended for the bird, but which resonated in his own heart. The thought of her recognizing his scent sent a thrill through him, an emotion he was unaccustomed to in the guarded confines of his princely existence. Henry slumped to the ground, overwhelmed by the intensity of his feelings. The Queen's words echoed in his mind, each syllable a caress that set his heart racing. He was lost in the memory of her breath against his ear, a sensation so vivid, so tantalizing, it was as if she were with him in the room. His reverie was abruptly shattered by Haxon's abrupt entrance, his confidant and cousin, who seemed to perpetually blur the lines between secretary, knight, and friend. "Oh, Henry, I'm sorry, I should have knocked. Why on earth are you naked? You'll get sick. Cover yourself up." Concerned, Haxon rummaged through the closet for clothes. Henry's glare was as sharp as a blade. His privacy had been violated, his moment of fantasy interrupted. His frustration was evident, but as Henry stood up and reached for the offered clothing, Haxon seized the opportunity to probe. The knight's curiosity was piqued by the handkerchief and Henry's unusual behavior. "Your Highness, the person you went to see with the handkerchief, was it the Queen of Elisaria?" "Yes, Haxon. Now give me the clothes. You should have been more mindful before entering." Henry's gaze was fierce, a clear signal to drop the subject. Yet Haxon persisted, his own gaze unwavering, seeking answers from the prince. "Well?" "Well, what?" Henry, who was dressed now, offered only another question in response. Haxon folded his arms over his chest. "Do you intend to leave me in the dark? You are playing a dangerous game. How can I be of service to you if you continue to shut me out?" Ignoring Haxon, Henry stepped out onto the balcony of his assigned chambers. He sought solace in the evening breeze, hoping to cool the tumultuous emotions that Bronwyn had unwittingly stirred within him. But Haxon, ever the prince's loyal shadow, followed, his presence a reminder of the responsibilities and expectations that weighed heavily on Henry's royal shoulders. "Your Highness, you have to be honest. Was your secret correspondence with Bronwyn?" Henry's steps slowed, the question hanging in the air like a challenge. Even the mere thought of Bronwyn ignited a fire within him, a desire he could not name nor fully understand. She was more than a queen, more than a political ally. She was a mystery that beckoned him, a siren's call he found increasingly difficult to resist. Yet Henry knew the perils that lay in such admissions. The implications of his feelings for Bronwyn were vast, entangled in the politics and dangers of the realm. But even as he stood, trying to subdue his emotions, a rage built to a crescendo within the prince. He clenched his fists, finally reaching his limit to the relentless questioning from his cousin. Hearing the Queen's name in Haxon's mouth enraged him. "Haxon, I need you to leave. Not until you've answered me. Now, absolutely not. This concerns the fate of the entire—" Henry spun around and slammed his fist into Haxon's face. The knight staggered, stumbling backwards into the room. The prince slowly stalked closer as Haxon struggled to get back on his feet. "Where do you get the audacity to call her anything but Her Majesty the Queen?" Henry leapt forward and kicked Haxon, sending blood splattering across the tapestries hanging on the wall. The knight looked up at Prince Henry, pleading, "Please, Henry, it's me. I didn't mean any offense. I'm here to look after you." Henry knelt down next to the bloodied knight, reaching behind Haxon's left boot and pulling a dagger marked with an insignia precious to both of them. He pointed the dagger at the man's throat. "This blade has taken countless lives, hasn't it, Haxon?" Haxon gulped and took a deep breath. "Yes, Your Majesty, but only lives in the name of the prince." Hearing these words, the prince took a calming breath and turned the blade around, offering it back to the knight. "Haxon, some truths are better left unspoken. For both my well-being and yours, I must ask you to leave it at that." "I will do as you wish, Your Majesty. I only hope you won't end up trapped in a gilded cage of your own making, dear cousin." After his heated exchange with Haxon, Prince Henry went for a walk on the grounds of the southern palace, with his ever-loyal knight trailing behind him. He hoped the night air would soothe his nerves, and was relieved to find that it was indeed refreshing. The prince was just starting to feel like himself again, when he heard a woman's voice call his name.
Prince Henry!
The prince turned to see Rose walking toward him. With her eyelids drooping, the concubine looked like the picture of misery. There was a frailty about her that tugged at the heartstrings, a vulnerability that invoked an almost instinctual desire to protect. Henry's stance remained rigid and his expression stern. His voice was devoid of warmth, a stark contrast to the softness in Rose's eyes. "Why did you call me?" Rose did not answer. Her meekness, her apparent helplessness, was a siren's call to the heart. Henry, however, remained unmoved. "Do you not have anything to say to me?"
No.
Haxon, ever the cautious adviser, pulled Henry aside and whispered a warning. "Tread carefully, Prince. Despite Rose's fallen status, she is still in favor with the king, and any indiscretion in her presence could have severe consequences." Undeterred, Henry pressed on, his gaze piercing. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" "I think you do." Haxon braced himself for the confrontation he felt was inevitable. His warning told him not to stay silent, but he did not want to anger the prince again. Rose's eyes, large and expressive, filled with tears. Yet as they spilled over, there was no trace of fear in her gaze. Instead, something shifted, a transformation that caught both Henry and Haxon off guard.
You are a wonderful man, Prince Henry, despite how the king may feel about you. I not only believe this, I know this.
Haxon's eyebrows knitted in confusion at her unexpected reaction. Prince Henry was equally surprised, but his frown deepened. With a sheepish smile, Rose wiped her eyes. Once the king's favourite, the concubine was now reduced to a figure of pity, yet she held on to a dignity that seemed to defy her circumstances.
I'm sorry. You must be embarrassed by my sudden crying.
Henry scoffed. You think I would be embarrassed by your crying? You might be able to fool the whole kingdom, Rose, but this is just a performance to me. One I would rather miss. If you have something more to say, I'd prefer you not waste my time. Rose's eyes met his, a flicker of something more than sadness in their depths.
I know we're not on good terms, Prince, but I don't know who else I can turn to. After those vicious rumours spread, people began to treat me horribly. They used to be sweet, but now they laugh and mock me, as if they have no consideration for who I am today.
I see. I'm sorry to cut you off, but your situation has turned quite pitiful. The sight of her in such distress stirred a subtle joy in the prince's heart. The cruelty of the nobility was well known, their kindness often reserved only for those of equal or higher status. It was evident that those same nobles who had once adored Rose now revelled in her misfortune. Prince Henry let out an exhausted sigh, a clear indication of his desire to end the encounter. Haxon was taken aback by this. Well, that's enough of this. Haxon, I believe we have somewhere to be, don't we? With this, Henry turned and walked away, leaving Rose in tears. Haxon, who couldn't help but feel sympathy for Rose, offered her a consoling yet awkward smile before following Prince Henry. Your Highness, I know you're on bad terms, but that was a little too cold, wasn't it? Look at the girl. She has accomplished much and is still young. She must have great promise. You want me to show courtesy to someone who tried to deceive me, who accused me of being a liar? Haxon pondered the situation. He understood the prince's animosity, but the sight of Rose's tears had momentarily softened his heart. Haxon was not just Prince Henry's protector and advisor. He was also a man, taken aback by Rose's beauty. The knight tilted his head, lost in thought, as they continued their walk towards the southern palace. Henry shifted the conversation to more pressing matters. More importantly, Haxon, when is Elegy coming? Did you deliver the letter? I delivered it properly. But why did you call him all of a sudden? Henry's pace slowed as he considered his response. Haxon cowered, fearing another blow. There was a dangerous, unpredictable side to the prince. He could usually hide his true nature well, but the continued questioning from Haxon was beginning to get on his last nerve.
Grand Duke Elegy? I stared at the minister in bewilderment, and he nodded in affirmation. Are you here as part of the delegation mission?
No, Your Majesty. I came to Elisaria for sightseeing.
The very notion seemed outlandish. Foreign guests rarely ventured to our lands during the month or two after the winter solstice celebrations. It was a time usually devoid of festivals or fanfare. Those who lingered past the solstice usually did so to avoid the necessity of a return visit. It struck me as peculiar, then, that Duke Elegy, who had excused himself from the winter solstice festivities due to pressing engagements, would now find the time for a casual visit. Perhaps he came to see Prince Henry. Duke Elegy was reputedly a close associate of the prince. The thought of him as a mere playboy friend crossed my mind. Pondering this, I nevertheless signed the documents permitting him to stay and return to my duties. Later, while dining with the ladies-in-waiting, the subject of the Duke resurfaced. Your Majesty, did you hear? Duke Elegy Claudia came to the palace today, Lady Eliza scoffed. Of course she knows, Laura. Everyone knows. Oh, I see. So you do know, then, who Lord Elegy was with all day? Prince Henry? Laura snorted derisively at Lady Eliza. No, not at all. He was with the slave, Rose. Ah, Rose. I cringed at hearing the concubine's name. Another day, another thorn. I felt compelled to speak as I could see that all eyes were on me, as if my ladies were expecting a heightened reaction. That's surprising, given Duke Elegy's close ties with Prince Henry. I had assumed he would naturally distance himself from Rose. Laura continued, her voice tinged with nervous energy. They didn't just meet casually. They were together the entire day. I heard they were intimately close to each other. Not just that. Their closeness caused quite a stir. I did not like where this was going, but I had to admit I was intrigued. I looked at Laura, prompting her to continue. Duke Elegy and Rose were seen walking together when they encountered a noble. He recognized Rose as a runaway slave and began hurling insults at her for associating with the Duke. Before the noble could even finish his tirade, Duke Elegy struck him. The room seemed to come to a standstill at the revelation, the air thick with unspoken thoughts and curiosity. I sliced through my salad, pondering their words calmly before replying. He struck a noble. Yes, Your Majesty, and not any noble, but Lord Varric. Duke Elegy's reaction was, well, it was quite unexpected. And what became of Lord Varric? He was left quite stunned and humiliated, Your Majesty. There's talk that he's seeking recompense for the insult, but many are silently applauding the Duke's defense of Rose. My mind whirled with the implications of this event. Duke Elegy, a man of high status, defending a woman of no noble birth against a well-established lord. It was a bold statement, one that defied the rigid hierarchy of our court. But why would he defend her so vehemently, Lady Laura? Some suggest it may be more than mere chivalry. They say the Duke has taken a particular interest in Rose. The idea of such a scandalous liaison between Duke Elegy and Aldrich's concubine was at once both troubling and fascinating.
The table in Rose's drawing room was loaded with a diverse assortment of cakes. Light pink strawberry cake, yellow banana cream cake, melon cake. The desserts, tailored to Rose's taste, were created by the king's chef and were made to perfection in both appearance and taste. However, these dishes were not for Rose today.
Thank you for coming to my defense earlier, Duke.
Rose smiled at Duke Elegy, sitting opposite at her, and offered him a piece of cake. She was deeply grateful to him. Although Viscount Rothescue retracted his remarks about Rose being an escaped slave within a day, everyone at court was reluctant to believe him. As Rose had feared, she quickly became estranged from the nobles. Her friends stopped visiting her, and the flow of gifts disappeared. What was most upsetting, however, was the way they all looked at her. Some nobles showed contempt, others curiosity, some pity, and others vague interest. But Duke Elegy was different from all of them. He treated her kindly, like an aristocrat, just like she had been treated during the winter solstice. At first, Rose believed it was because Duke Elegy was ignorant about the rumors, but soon she saw with her own eyes that he didn't care about them. He even threw his fist at the nobleman who taunted her. He was a royal, he was a duke, he was a beautiful man who surrounded himself with the love of women, and he punched someone for her. Rose was flattered beyond measure, and so she invited him to enjoy her favorite food.
Thank you. I only respond that way to rude people, by the way.
Duke Elegy's gaze lingered on Rose, his eyes reflecting a mixture of admiration and something more intense.
Your bravery was unexpected, Duke Elegy.
He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his eyes never leaving hers.
Rose, in this world of duplicity and masks, I find your honesty refreshing, and I would defend that truth against anyone, noble or otherwise. Because, Rose, in your eyes, I see a strength and a passion that many in our high circles lack. You are more royal in your bearing than those born into it.
Duke Elegy's expression softened, and he reached across the table, his fingertips brushing against hers, sending a shiver through her body.
Duke Elegy,
The Duke withdrew his hand slowly.
I apologize if I've overstepped, Rose. But know this. I stand by my actions, and I stand by you. In a court where shadows rule, you shine brightly, unashamed to be yourself.
Rose looked down at the cakes, their sweetness a stark contrast to the bitter reality of her situation.
Thank you, Duke Elegy, for seeing me, for standing by me. As you may have heard, there are bad rumours going round about me. They're false, of course.
Duke Elegy, leaning back in his chair, regarded her with a mix of curiosity and concern.
Does this always happen?
Rose's eyes darted away, as if seeking escape from a truth she'd long wrestled with.
It's nothing to be ashamed of. The ones who are rude are the ones who should be ashamed.
A silence fell between them, heavy and thick. Finally, Rose exhaled, a soft admission escaping her lips.
I suppose it happens a lot.
Duke Elegy's expression darkened, his hand curling into a fist against the arm of the chair.
That bastard! Saying you're a slave in front of you. So what if you're a slave? I should have thrashed his teeth in. No, I should have had him beheaded, fed his body to the pigs. He should be lucky I'm not the king.
Rose flinched slightly, not used to such open displays of anger on her behalf.
Do you really believe that display of violence would be necessary? I'm not asking to criticize Duke Elegy. I'm genuinely curious.
I suppose that may be a bit rash. My temper has gotten out of hand from time to time. You know, I originally came here to see a friend, but I'm glad I met you first. If I weren't there, no one else would stand up to that cockroach.
The Duke took a big, calming breath, then let out a hearty laugh.
My friend must be worried that I haven't shown up yet.
Duke Elegy was an enigma. Rough and unrefined like a mercenary from a street bar, yet simultaneously possessing an air of sophistication and nobility. Rose found herself drawn to this contrast, this paradox of a man who could effortlessly blend brutality with grace. The sight of this muscular, big-mouthed noble delicately consuming dainty cakes was both amusing and endearing. And most importantly, he didn't care that she was a slave. Rose especially liked him for that.
Anyway, miss, let's make sure it doesn't happen again in the future. There's no way those insects will suddenly disappear.
I'm sure that is true.
Heed my words, Rose. You'd best take care of it as soon as possible. Matters like this can get out of hand quickly and spread like wildfire.
I can't think of a fathomable way to fix this, Duke. Viscount Rothescue spread those rumours himself. The people are smart. They know what the king likely said to him, even though he says the rumours are false. The people know this is forced.
Duke Elegy took another bite of his yellow cake and explained with a mouthful of food.
The solution is simple, Rose. Pass the burden on to someone else. It's faster than an explanation. Spread your own wildfire to swallow the other one.
What do you mean?
The role of society's chewbone. Shift it to someone else.
And what of consequences?
Consequences are for those who are caught.
Rose stared at him, a mix of shock and intrigue in her gaze. The Duke's proposal was cunning, ruthless even. The Duke was right. In that moment, Rose saw not just a brutish noble, but a strategist hidden beneath the facade of raw muscle and blunt words. This revelation, coupled with his disregard for her status, stirred something within her. A sense of intrigue, a flicker of desire, and perhaps the faintest glimmer of hope.
The palace was shrouded in morning fog as I awoke, a silvery veil that cloaked the world in mystery and anticipation. I opened the window. leaning my head out to let the cool, misty air cleanse my body and spirit. Today was significant. Today I would meet with Grand Duke Bjorn to discuss opening diplomatic ties. I have to be at my best, I thought, steeling myself for the day ahead. As I tied the curtains together, a glimpse of something unusual caught my eye. There, on the windowsill, secured underneath a stone, was a letter. My heart skipped a beat. Was this a message from Prince Henry? With a mixture of surprise and curiosity, I opened the letter, recognizing Prince Henry's distinct handwriting immediately.
Trust me.
That was it. That was all it said. What? What did he want me to trust him for? Despite the uncertainty, a wave of happiness washed over me at receiving a letter after such a long while. However, sending a reply was not an option at the moment, as Majesty was absent. I carefully tucked the mysterious paper into a drawer and proceeded to the bathroom to splash my face with cold water, bracing myself for the day. Afterwards, I rang a bell, summoning the ladies-in-waiting who promptly entered to prepare me for the day's important meeting. You're having a meeting at a round table, aren't you? You'll be seated next to people, so we shouldn't choose a dress that's too wide. Countess Eliza, the most experienced among them, bustled about me, fussing. She selected a black dress that fell almost in a straight line, the fabric whispering promises of elegance and authority. As she arranged my hair, I issued a few instructions that had nothing to do with the coming events of the day, but which felt more important than I dared explain. If Majesty comes while I'm away, please give him some water. Of course, Your Majesty. Shall I fetch some bird feedings? I thought of asking her to bring the fruit and caviar Prince Henry suggested, but decided that was a bridge too far, at least for Countess Eliza. No, but that's a kind thought, Eliza. Oh, and allow him inside if it rains. Sometimes he gets caught in the rain outside the window. I left Countess Eliza with my requests and took a deep breath, gathering my courage and resolve. This was a day of great importance, a day that could shape the future of our kingdom. The weight of this responsibility lay heavily on my shoulders, yet I felt an inner strength, a determination to face the challenges ahead. As I stepped out of my chamber, the corridors of the palace seemed to echo with the whispers of past and future intrigues. The fog outside had begun to lift, revealing the sprawling gardens and the distant hills, a reminder of the vastness of my kingdom and the many lives that depended on my decisions. I walked with purpose, my mind a whirl of strategies and contingencies. Today's meeting was not just about diplomacy. It was a test of my leadership. Upon reaching the room, I paused for a moment, steadying my breathing and calming my racing heart. I could hear the muffled voices of the delegates inside. With one last deep breath, I pushed open the doors and stepped into the room, my eyes meeting those of Grand Duke Bjorn. I was ready to lead my kingdom into a new era. The letter from Prince Henry, though puzzling, had somehow bolstered my confidence. In the back of my mind, his words resonated.
Trust me.
And in that moment, I decided that I would. The meeting convened promptly at 10 a.m., the grand chamber echoing with the hushed tones of anticipation and the rustle of important documents. It was a relatively small assembly, yet each person present held a gravity of influence. The finance minister, the foreign minister, key officials from each department, Grand Duke Bjorn, Aldrich, and myself formed a circle of power and strategy around the grand oak table. The topic at hand was the delicate and ambitious opening of diplomatic relations with Rhett. As we discussed the potential benefits and risks, the weight of the decision lay heavily upon us. The world was vast, divided into 8 continents, each a realm of its own, with little exchange between them. The Wool continent, cradle of the Eastern Empire, and the Horsteed continent, home to Rhett, were closer in proximity compared to others, yet still separated by daunting distances. The complexities of private trade, the necessity of swift communication in state-led transactions, all painted a picture of a challenging, yet potentially lucrative endeavor. The thick air of tension in the room was palpable, and it wasn't solely due to the gravity of the discussions. Aldrich, who was supposed to lead the meeting, glowered through the proceedings, his mood as stormy as a tempest-tossed sea. His presence cast a shadow over the assembly, stifling the flow of ideas, making it difficult for officials to offer free opinions. Their eyes flickered towards him, wariness etched in their glances. Why does Aldrich look like he's in a foul mood? I found myself pondering, unable to shake off the sense of unease that his demeanor instilled. Could it be the recent incident involving Duke and Rose? The thought crossed my mind, a whisper of concern. It was unseemly, unprofessional even, to let personal grievances seep into matters of state. Yet here we were, tiptoeing around his visible ire, the undercurrents of his discontent sending ripples through the meeting. I lifted my gaze from the intricate map sprawled across the table, stifling a sigh as my eyes inadvertently met Grand Duke Bjorn's. His expression was a mask of neutrality, neither openly antagonistic nor overtly favorable. Yet there was a sharp intelligence in his eyes that missed nothing. As our eyes met, he offered a subtle nod. I returned the gesture, a silent understanding passing between us. The meeting with Grand Duke Bjorn stretched on, each moment a languorous crawl through matters of state and kingdom. Its conclusion saw me, unexpectedly, appointed to oversee the new task of establishing these tricky trade relations. The Grand Duke's recommendation was as perplexing as it was unforeseen, especially given his frosty demeanor towards me during the winter solstice day. Once the echoes of departing footsteps faded, leaving the chamber hollow and still, I pursued Grand Duke Bjorn into the opulent hallway, its shadows playing tricks in the dim light. Grand Duke! At the sound of my voice, the Duke paused.
Yes, Your Majesty. What is it you wish to inquire about?
Why have you recommended me for this charge?
Does the appointment not please Your Majesty?
It's just curious, considering your stance towards me only a few days ago.
Because it holds true, Your Majesty.
A hint of a smile played on his lip. The meeting convened promptly at 10 a.m., the grand chamber echoing with the hushed tones of anticipation and the rustle of important documents. It was a relatively small assembly, yet each person present held a gravity of influence. The finance minister, the foreign minister, key officials from each department, Grand Duke Bjorn, Aldrich, and myself formed a circle of power and strategy around the grand oak table. The topic at hand was the delicate and ambitious opening of diplomatic relations with Rhett. As we discussed the potential benefits and risks, the weight of the decision lay heavily upon us. The world was vast, divided into 8 continents, each a realm of its own, with little exchange between them. The Wool continent, cradle of the Eastern Empire, and the Horsteed continent, home to Rhett, were closer in proximity compared to others, yet still separated by daunting distances. The complexities of private trade, the necessity of swift communication in state-led transactions, all painted a picture of a challenging, yet potentially lucrative endeavor. The thick air of tension in the room was palpable, and it wasn't solely due to the gravity of the discussions. Aldrich, who was supposed to lead the meeting, glowered through the proceedings, his mood as stormy as a tempest-tossed sea. His presence cast a shadow over the assembly, stifling the flow of ideas, making it difficult for officials to offer free opinions. Their eyes flickered towards him, wariness etched in their glances. Why does Aldrich look like he's in a foul mood? I found myself pondering, unable to shake off the sense of unease that his demeanor instilled. Could it be the recent incident involving Duke and Rose? The thought crossed my mind, a whisper of concern. It was unseemly, unprofessional even, to let personal grievances seep into matters of state. Yet here we were, tiptoeing around his visible ire, the undercurrents of his discontent sending ripples through the meeting. I lifted my gaze from the intricate map sprawled across the table, stifling a sigh as my eyes inadvertently met Grand Duke Bjorn's. His expression was a mask of neutrality, neither openly antagonistic nor overtly favourable. Yet there was a sharp intelligence in his eyes that missed nothing. As our eyes met, he offered a subtle nod. I returned the gesture, a silent understanding passing between us. The meeting with Grand Duke Bjorn stretched on, each moment a languorous crawl through matters of state and kingdom. Its conclusion saw me, unexpectedly, appointed to oversee the new task of establishing these tricky trade relations. The Grand Duke's recommendation was as perplexing as it was unforeseen, especially given his frosty demeanour towards me during the winter solstice day. Once the echoes of departing footsteps faded, leaving the chamber hollow and still, I pursued Grand Duke Bjorn into the opulent hallway, its shadows playing tricks in the dim light. Grand Duke. At the sound of my voice, the Duke paused.
Yes, Your Majesty. What is it you wish to inquire about?
Why have you recommended me for this charge?
Does the appointment not please Your Majesty?
It's just curious, considering your stance towards me only a few days ago.
Because it holds true, Your Majesty.
A hint of a smile played on his lips, knowing and slightly mocking. The lines of his face were etched with a smugness that was as infuriating as it was intriguing. His tone, ever so composed, stirred a flicker of irritation within me. What do you mean by that?
When the topic of Emona and Emot arose, you were the only one who grasped its significance.
That was a mere coincidence. I am not versed in those tongues beyond a few words.
Yet those few words set you apart from the rest.
I was left to ponder whether it was merely my linguistic knowledge that swayed his decision, or if there was a deeper motive. Very well, Grand Duke Bjorn inclined his head, a gesture both respectful and dismissive. He turned, his figure retreating down the corridor, the sound of his footsteps echoing like a distant thunder. The Grand Duke's inscrutable smile haunted me, igniting a spark of something dangerous. I turned away, but my introspection was abruptly interrupted by the sight of Aldrich in the conference room, a looming presence against the dim backdrop. He was leaning against a table, his form radiating a brooding intensity that was palpable even from a distance. His expression, darker than the shadows that played across the room, drew me towards him despite my reservations. Your Majesty? Aldrich didn't respond immediately, his gaze fixed on some distant point, lost in thoughts that seemed to weigh heavily upon him. The air between us crackled. You look grim, Aldrich. Are you all right?
Do you have a preference for foreigners, Bronwyn?
A preference for foreigners? What are you implying, Aldrich? His eyes finally met mine, and there was a storm brewing in their depths.
I won't stop the Queen from paying attention to other men, but I hoped they would not be foreigners.
I felt a flare of anger at his audacity. The nerve of him to bring up such a subject, especially after his own indiscretions with Rose. You have no right to dictate whom I speak to, Aldrich. You forget yourself. You were the one who brought a concubine into our lives, and now you dare to question my associations. The king stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. The air between us was now charged with a volatile mix of emotions. Anger, hurt, and an undercurrent of something more primal. Aldrich's gaze didn't waver, but I saw a flicker of something. Regret, perhaps, or a realization of his own hypocrisy. But he was quick to mask it beneath the facade of royal authority.
It's not about rights. It's about respect.
Respect is earned, Aldrich. And lately you've done little to earn mine. Do not place your care on the foreigners whom I engage with. I stepped back, putting distance between us, a symbolic barrier to the tumultuous emotions swirling within me.
How can I not care? Are you not my wife? Are you forgetting what it means to be married? That we are the king and queen? That is madness!
I stood there, my heart pounding, a retort teetering on the tip of my tongue. I wanted to remind him of Rose, to throw his indiscretions in his face, but I knew it would only spiral into accusations of jealousy. Aldrich, seeming to sense my internal struggle, exhaled in a manner that was both dignified and fraught with unspoken emotions. Oh, get on with it, Aldrich. Who are you referring to now?
Do you like Duke Bjorn? To the point that he makes you swoon.
The brief interactions with Duke Bjorn had been nothing more than diplomatic necessities. Yet in Aldrich's eyes, they seemed to have taken on a different meaning. You misunderstand, Your Majesty. My conversations with Grand Duke Bjorn are purely about matters of state. Aldrich's gaze softened slightly, but there was still an edge to his voice.
Yes, well, I'm glad to hear that. But I'd like you to be more mindful.
Mindful? The word echoed in my mind. A reminder of the careful balance I had to maintain. And what of your own mindfulness, Aldrich? What of your attentions to Rose? Do they not warrant the same caution? There was a moment of silence. A brief pause where the air seemed to still around us. Aldrich's eyes darkened, a storm brewing in their depths.
That is different. Rose is a complication, but she does not change the fact that you are my wife, the Queen.
Being your wife does not mean I cease to be a person, Aldrich. My conversations, my associations, they are mine to choose. His words, meant to be reassuring, only served to deepen the chasm between us. I felt a surge of frustration, mixed with a sadness that I couldn't quite name. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving Aldrich standing alone in the dimly lit room. The conference room was suffused with the dry air of pragmatism as we delved into the details of the annual state budget. Around the polished oak table, the finance minister and treasury officials presented their reports with an efficiency that was both admirable and daunting. The figures and forecasts were laid out before us, a map of the kingdom's fiscal health.
The tax revenues are about the same as last year. While the system is expected to be unchanged, we can't be certain of the costs. We can use last year's budget plan as a foundation.
Right. Overall, there is no national conflict expected, so we can set it similar to last year's. I closed the folio in front of me, feeling a sense of order amidst the sea of numbers. The meeting progressed smoothly, each official contributing their piece to the fiscal puzzle. But as the topic shifted to more personal expenses of the court, the atmosphere in the room subtly changed. Unlike the structured salaries of court officials or the budgeted expenses for events, the funds allocated to concubines lacked any standard precedent. I attempted to bring some order to this less regimented aspect of the budget. Do you have a separate account book for Rose? It should be simple to calculate her expenses. The finance minister stammered.
The books for Rose did not come through the treasury, since there is no specific allocation yet. With that being the case, it would have to fall under your account, Your Majesty. The king is currently providing for her personally.
Is that so? I suppose this is a matter I will discuss directly with the king. A young official, sensing the delicate nature of the topic, spoke up.
What if we reference Countess Malty's case, Your Majesty? She was a commoner before becoming a concubine early in the king's rule.
Prices have risen considerably since then. Surely you're keenly aware of the ever-changing economic landscape. I'm afraid their situations aren't directly comparable.
We still need some basis for calculation, Your Majesty. Once the amount is set, it will be challenging to adjust it downward. But if there is a new concubine...
The finance minister stammered again when he noticed my frown.
Apologies, Your Majesty.
It's fine. You're right. We must be prudent in setting precedents. A moment of silence left a weight in the room, heavy enough to crumble the floor beneath us. The meeting with the finance minister stretched far longer than anticipated, the minutes bleeding into hours, until the room felt like a temporal prison. When I finally emerged, the crisp air outside was a jolt, reminding me of the world beyond the palace's stone walls. The sun, though still aloft, cast a dimmer light, its rays waning in the encroaching evening. I missed lunchtime, I realized with a start. The morning's engagement with Grand Duke Bjorn had overrun into the afternoon. And now, following the exhaustive session with the finance minister, I felt the sharp pang of hunger. My thoughts briefly wandered to Majesty, wondering if he had sought me out during my absence. With a new, profound urgency, I quickened my pace, the emptiness in my stomach echoing the hollowness of today's unending meetings. Sir Artemis, ever vigilant, trailed behind me. As we approached the fork in the path leading to the eastern and western palaces, a flash of blue caught my eye. The hem of a skirt peeked out from behind a cluster of bushes, stirring a sense of curiosity and caution. Sir Artemis, did you see something strange?
I did, Your Majesty.
Who is that?
I don't know.
As if on cue, the owner of the skirt emerged, revealing herself to be Viscountess Verdi. Her eyes met mine briefly before darting away, scanning the surroundings with an urgency that belied her composed exterior. She beckoned me over, but I hesitated, unsure of her intentions. Sir Artemis muttered under his breath, his hand inching towards his sword.
Careful, Viscountess Verdi. Surprising the Queen like that can be deadly.
Thank you, Sir Artemis. Viscountess Verdi, I expect that you will not be too surprised if I am on my way. There's nothing more we need to say to each other. The Viscountess, undeterred by the rebuke, approached me, her expression a tumult of desperation and resolve. She whispered to me in hushed tones, Your Majesty, please. I have something urgent to tell you. Although I am no longer your lady-in-waiting, I cannot rest until you know this. Her hands trembled visibly as she spoke, and I motioned for Sir Artemis to hold his tongue, allowing the Viscountess to continue. What is it that's so urgent? Be quick about it. I believe Viscount Rothescue knows something. Something about Rose. A weakness. What do you mean, a weakness? I couldn't hear all the details, but I think she... Her words were cut off by the sound of a twig snapping in the distance. We all turned towards the noise, but by the time our eyes refocused, Viscountess Verdi had vanished, slipping back into the cover of the bushes like a shadow. I had no interest in conversing with Viscountess Verdi, especially about Rose, but I would have been inclined to hear her out had she stayed. The sudden disappearance left a lingering sense of disquiet. What could Viscount Rothescue possibly know about Miss Rose that held such importance? And why did Viscountess Verdi feel compelled to risk her own standing to inform me? I turned to Sir Artemis. What do you make of that, Artemis?
I don't know, Your Majesty. The lady looked as if she was deeply troubled. I would say it is a blessing in disguise that she is no longer with you.
Something must have scared her. She fears for her safety. I think it would be wise for us to tread carefully. Something feels wrong. And speaking of wrong, as I looked towards where Viscountess Verdi had stood, I noticed another figure approaching. It was Rose. Her appearance markedly changed. She was thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, and carried herself with an air of frailty. Greeting me with a short bow, her voice was a mere whisper. Who was there just now? That is my business. Rose was scrutinizing the bushes where Viscountess Verdi had vanished. I couldn't tell if she saw anything, but her suspicion was evident. The concubine sighed, a sound laden with unspoken woes. Instead of prying further into the mystery of the vanished Viscountess, her gaze returned to me, filled with a somber gloom. Well, Your Majesty, may I inquire something of you? Go ahead. It's regarding Duchess Betha. Duchess Betha? What could Rose possibly want from her? I wondered.